It is 3 minutes after 10. A very good morning indeed to you. And I don't think it is time necessarily to breathe an enormous sigh of relief regarding the big picture, regarding the possibility, the likelihood of the kind of hideous scenes that we have been watching now for a week and a half coming to an end. But we can certainly breathe a sigh of relief over fears that last night would mark a serious escalation. The reported targeting of various law firms and centres dedicated to helping vulnerable people were, I don't know whether they were exaggerated. Some people suggesting that it was all a massive hoax, which is clearly ridiculous, but it is clearly true that nobody turned up. Or at least if they did, and I was following events quite closely in my own part of town, not least because I could hear from my back garden the locale of the protests. If anybody did turn up, then they would have got straight back on the bus again, because the anti-fascist element, the people rejecting hatred, outnumbered the people there, whether through ideological racism or simply because they quite fancied getting involved in some of the looting that they'd been watching on their screens in recent days. They would have turned tail and headed off very, very quickly. I don't know what your favourite image is of the problems that didn't happen in England last night. There were some fellas who tried to sort of occupy a traffic island while shouting, quotes, patriotic, end quotes, slogans. There were 4 fellas, I think, in Brighton who turned up to, I don't know, do you support hate? How do you call it? I mean, to do a proper hate march. Not the kind of hate march Suella Braverman talks about when she's describing people calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, but the kind of people who turn up to express hate and attack the police and burn things. So I don't know what they were turning up for, but there were only 4 of them. There were thousands of people. So you ended up, and I think they got a lift home from the police because they were marooned in an ocean of decency. Is that what you mean by two-tier policing? So the far-right protesters who turned up in Brighton got a lift home from the police, and there were only 4 of them, whereas the hundreds or if not thousands of protesters for decency, anti-hate, they all had to make their own way home. That's not fair. That's what you mean by two-tier policing. The hate marchers got a lift home from the old Bill. Everyone else had to catch a bus. Are there any trams in Brighton? There aren't any trams in Brighton, are there? So I don't know what your favourite bit was. The faces of those men were a picture because they couldn't get out. They were literally marooned in a sea of decency. I would wonder how they identified as potential hate marchers. One of them had a Union flag wrapped around his waist like a sort of sarong. But so he could have taken it off and stuffed it in his pocket. How did they know? How did you end up in a situation where you're surrounded by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of anti-hate protesters, and you have somehow managed to identify yourself as being on the other side? And they've got that look on their face. They're looking up, thinking, how the hell I could be at home watching the Olympics. What on earth was I thinking of? I only came out because I saw those women nicking the fake Crocs and thought I might be able to grab myself a pair. But anyway, I don't know if that's what two-tier policing is, getting a lift home from the... apparently there were 7. I'm told there were 7 racists in Brighton in the end. Some of the scenes from Birmingham were particularly lovely. Like Chris tells me, he says, last night genuinely made me fill up. People around here were shaking hands, dancing, hugging. I've recently had an operation I would have loved to have gone. And then the sheer scale from the sky, the pictures from the sky, particularly in Walthamstow, just, I think, defied even the most optimistic expectations of those of us who reject the hatred of people like Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage, of course, and various other groups. And it is to those groups that I turn your attention next. There's 2 articles that I've had a look at this morning. I had a look at a lot more. There's a superb piece in the London Review of Books. I've tweeted it from my Twitter account, and as far as I can tell, it's not paywalled. I sometimes can't tell whether something is paywalled or not because I've forgotten whether or not I've got a subscription, but I don't think it's paywalled, is it? It sounds as if it's just be full of book reviews, doesn't it, the London Review of Books? But it's an absolutely superb organ that I really can't recommend highly enough. And a journalist called Daniel Trilling, who is a major talent, has been for years. He's had a proper look at the creation of the ecosystem in which this explosion of hatred could occur. That's probably the best way of describing it. The creation of the environment in which this violent explosion of feral hatred could happen in public in Britain, in England, in England in 2024. And he makes a point that we nodded to yesterday, but did not fully indulge because we were examining the fairness or unfairness of calling these explosions of violent racist hatred the Farage riots. I think we can all agree that Nigel's attempts to nip that little nomenclature in the bud didn't go quite as well as he might have been hoping. But let's move our focus today away, perhaps from him, and towards some of the institutions, perhaps even some of the individuals who seem to be celebrating the rejection of hatred that we saw last night in a slightly surprising way. Front page of the Daily Mail it looks a little like the front page of the Daily Mirror, which is not something that happens very often. And yet, of course, the rhetoric of racism has been their lifeblood for the best part of 20 years. The front pages, which were incitements to the sort of scenes we have witnessed, are innumerable. There's almost too many to count. So how much blame lies with household name conservative politicians and traditional right-wing media? That's the question I've got for you today. Because the other article I looked at was in The Guardian, and they, under the headline, UK extremists, the actors, activists and conspiracists on the far right, run through a selection of sources, some individual, some institutional, that they argue have created the ecosystem in which this explosion of racist hatred could happen. So I'll run through who they identify. They talk about Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, who of course calls himself Tommy Robinson and his allies. The lad from Lewis who wasn't Lewis, Lawrence Fox, he gets a mention. An organisation called Patriotic Alternative, which was formed by a former BNP activist. Britain First, which has kind of been overtaken, I think, by Patriotic Alternative, another BNP activist behind that one. Something called Turning Point UK. I remember when that launched. I'll tell you what, you'd be very surprised by the identity of some of the people who offered up warm words of support when this very sinister organisation launched in 2019. I wonder if you want to have a crack at reminding me who some of them were. But this is a spin-off from a pro-Trump US youth campaign. It's recently had a crossover with UKIP, and they share personnel up to and including the interim leader, who was outside Downing Street during a protest that turned violent on the 1st of August. And then The Guardian also identifies various conspiracy theorist websites which have been pumping the lies, the fake news. And they describe one of them as seeking to ride on the coattail of rallies for both Robinson and Farage. And then the possibly rather more uncomfortable contentions that Daniel Trilling makes in the London Review of Books, because, as he points out, the attempts to depict the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 as signs of an alien culture were not confined to conspiracy theorist websites or far-right splinter groups. You may even have heard people on the radio describing those protests, which were heavily policed up to and including horse charges, and yet largely peaceful, not even comparable in any way to the scenes that we've seen in Rotherham and Southport and Tamworth and elsewhere. Not, of course, that would stop a bad actor like Nigel Farage. When I say bad actor like Nigel Farage, obviously it's a different meaning of the phrase bad actor to the one you'd use for Lawrence Fox, although, of course, in the case of the lad from Lewis who wasn't Lewis, he's a bad actor in both senses. But the depictions, if you like, the attempts to portray the Black Lives Matter protest in a really negative light came from a form of institutional racism that has not been injected into the public bloodstream by people like Stephen Yaxley-Lennon and Nigel Farage. It has been very carefully fomented by people like Paul Dacre, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Mail, and Ted Verity, the current editor of the Daily Mail, various writers on the Daily Mail over the years. It's interesting what some of the columnists have to say today, writing about the strangest things, writing about their television aerials on a day when the massive rejection of hatred up and down the country would presumably have been the first focus of most columnists, but no, apparently not. And the idea that what the rioters have responded to is much more than racist lies that were disseminated across the internet by some of the characters that we've just mentioned. So who do you hold responsible? And I don't mean most responsible. I just want you to think back. I've mentioned one example. I've mentioned two, actually. The very deliberate depiction of Black Lives Matter protests as signs of a, quote, alien culture that has taken over. Andrew Neil's Spectator is always full of articles which don't even dress it up anymore in fancy language, complaining about how many people who weren't born here work here, which is an interesting evolution from the days when racist writers would complain that all of the people who weren't born here are claiming benefits or simultaneously claiming benefits and stealing our jobs. But the identity politics, the idea that your origins are more important than your character or your behaviour is, to me at least, a fundamental platform of what I would call middle-class racism. I mean, who would you rather live next door to? The people that were setting fire to wheelie bins and hotels in Southport, or the people driving the taxis that the far-right mobs attacked? Who would you rather live next door to? So why should I care more about origin than I do about character and behaviour? But hey-ho, here's another article about how many foreign-born people have got jobs. So who do you want to put on this list? You've got the Black Lives Matter protest, and then you've got Braverman describing a ceasefire, people calling for a ceasefire in Gaza as hate marchers. You've also got the issue of migration, the fact that our economy depends upon immigration. I mean, every aspect of our economy depends upon immigration. That is why when European Union citizens stopped coming here, or indeed left the country because we told them to and made it much harder for them to do so, that the holes that they left in our workforce and our economy had to be filled by people who've come from much further afield. So net migration rockets to levels that we've never seen before because these people are starting from scratch. But the government, of course, while refusing to publicly acknowledge that we need these workers who keep our vital services such as social care running, instead sought to publicly punish them for coming here by, for example, banning their loved ones from coming to live with them. This is all coming from Daniel Trilling's excellent piece in the London Review of Books today. So how much responsibility do supposedly respectable outlets like the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph and the Spectator, and supposedly respectable politicians like Suella Braverman and Honest Bob Jenrick and Priti Patel, who was warned in terms to stop describing immigration lawyers as lefty lawyers. I think Rishi Sunak latterly joined in with that. They were warned, I think by security services, certainly by the Bar Council, that if you did that, you were painting targets on the backs of British lawyers. What did they do? They carried on. And who was supposedly in the sights of the far-right mobs last night? Immigration lawyers. So yesterday, I think we had an almost unanimous conclusion that calling them the Farage riots was both fair and justified, because his intervention on Tuesday of last week was so hideous and so disgusting that the hashtag, as it were, became inevitable and justified. But let's cast our net a little further. And I'm not looking today. I think it's a little bit, not lazy, but I think it's a little bit, what's the word I want, do you think? A sort of combination of reassuring and lazy. People are a little bit frightened of how close to home the gaze may be when you're looking for people that helped create an environment in which this explosion of violent, feral racial hatred exploded on our streets. 18 minutes after 10 is the time. So how much responsibility do conservative politicians and right-wing media bear for what we have all recently endured? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973. How much blame, how much responsibility? And you might want to tell me to calm down and that this isn't it's a fair question, obviously. I don't want to sound like Nigel Farage, I'm only asking questions. It's a fair question, and my answer to it would, at this point, be quite a hell of a lot. Possibly even all of it, because they create the space into which the extremists can then move. The further you move the Overton window, the easier it is for Nazis to get an airing. But how much responsibility do people like Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Spectator bear for creating the environment in which this hatred could explode? 90 minutes after 10 is the time. This is funny. James, please point out that the far-right protest in Southampton was not only a damp squib, but they also targeted a migration expert organisation's address. This is a company that specialises in helping UK residents migrate to countries such as Australia, Canada and the USA. Well done, lads. It's quite a British response, isn't it, to look for the humour even in the darkest of times. But I think you'd have to be made of stone not to find that funny. Nothing funny, really, about the idea that very, very mainstream, that's the word, isn't it? Very mainstream individuals and institutions are actually culpable at the moment, actually responsible. Our front page of the Daily Mail celebrating the rejection of hate when I would lose count of the number of front pages of the Daily Mail that encouraged it. But this is, as you know, a hobby horse of mine, and it may well be that I need to give my head a wobble. Sarah's in Bootle. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello, Sarah.
Well, speaking as a fellow immigrant like yourself, who came on boats.
I'm not an immigrant.
No, your ancestors did. You're Irish, you're like me.
Yes, no, of course I am. Yeah, well, you didn't say that. I'm a descendant of immigrants. There you go.
No,
well, not even that, actually. Biologically, I don't know what I am, because my biological parents are... Well, you've opened a box of frogs now. I've got to let them hop out. So what am I? What am I, then? If my biological parents were Irish and stayed in Ireland, came over to give birth, and then I got adopted, what am I?
Well, it goes by what your genes are. But anyway, shall we get back to this?
No, we won't, Sarah. I'm all confused now. What am I? Because I'm not an immigrant. Because I was in my mummy's tummy. I was in my biological mother's tummy when I came here.
I know, James.
And she's not an immigrant because she went straight back after. So what am I?
Oh, James, come on. Let's get back to the matter in hand.
Well, you can for a minute, but I'm going to sit here thinking about that while you blather on. Carry on.
Oh, dear me, James. You have to understand Scouse humour. Anyway, getting back to the matter in hand, talking about who's to blame for all of this.
Yes.
It doesn't take a total genius to work out that it's as soon as that shower of previous government got in 2010, who were the first people that they blamed for the global financial crisis and the mess that we were in with austerity?
Well, they didn't blame immigrants. They blamed the Labour Party.
Oh, no. After that, think on. The first thing they said, it is the fault of the immigrants, the refugees, the sick and disabled, the poor, the unemployed, and the elderly. It's their fault.
They never said that, but their policies were targeted
at those people. That's what I'm talking about. They might as well have said it, because their organs of media, the Spectator, the Telegraph, the Times, the Express, the Mail, and whatever other papers they like to put their nasty little propaganda out in, not to mention social media, they were the ones who pumped this message out for the last 14, 15 years.
It's unlikely, and I don't want this to sound snobbish, but it's unlikely that the people setting fire to wheelie bins in Southport have subscriptions to the Spectator magazine.
No, but they do read the likes of the Sun.
Yes.
And
it's extraordinary how many people write for both the Spectator and the Sun, people like Rod Liddell and Douglas Murray.
Exactly.
I don't know whether they adjust their style accordingly, but when people make that slightly silly observation I just made. I don't think they subscribe to The Spectator. You're dead right. They're reading the same writers, possibly using slightly shorter words in their Sun columns.
That's it, because both. I'm not sure if The Spectator's owned by Murdoch, but
no,
a lot of his
it was
writers
the Barclay brothers.
do for both, as you said.
Andrew Neil is in charge of The Spectator. So it just creates, and I'm just looking briefly at front pages: tax rises to pay for foreign aid, children told to cook and clean for migrants, asylum seekers ferried around in stretch limo, record numbers of jobless EU migrants in Britain, German. You can't survive without us. Migrants must speak English. Illegal migrants flood EU. You pay benefits for EU's jobless. Are you going back decades, 15, 20 years? Soaring cost of teaching migrant children. Immigration, what a mess. Britain's open door to asylum seekers. And today the Daily Mail is celebrating the rejection of the hatred that they seem to be either pretending or denying that they bear huge responsibility for.
Mm-hmm. They do.
It is. I think it's inarguable. I don't want... if you like, if there are reasons to disagree with me, and indeed with Sarah, then I do want to hear what they are. But you can't. I don't see how you can. And you know that these collages, if that's the right word, of front pages are all over the internet. People have put them together. Britain's 40% surge in ethnic numbers. Migrant workers flooding Britain. Britain opens door to asylum seekers. EU migrants to get British pensions. Migrants create 12,000 jobs a month. Workers are fired for being British. Immigration soars 20% in a year. Migrants rob young Britons of jobs. I mean, come on. Blame it all on the lad from Lewis who wasn't Lewis. And I mean, someone played me the footage of Yaxley Lennon actually yesterday on a podcast I was recording. I'll tell you a bit about it later. I couldn't actually believe my ears. But the environment in which these people can flourish was not created by these people. Tim's in Belfast. Tim, what would you like to say?
Hi, morning, James.
Hello.
I think, as going back to the Watergate phrase, follow the money.
Yes.
Newspapers' decline in circulation over the last 15 years due to digital has resulted in a huge decline in the money coming into them from what would have been seen as traditional advertising.
Okay.
In Belfast, the Belfast Telegraph was the most profitable business in the country. And yet its circulation has declined from around 150,000 down to around 20.
Yeah.
So advertisers are now buying pages for hundreds of pounds when they used to pay thousands.
Okay.
So the newspapers need to generate revenue through clicks. Everyone talks about social media. They have to compete with social media, so they're competing for eyeballs. So you don't get eyeballs onto your newspaper by saying everything's fine. You have to generate extremist and more extremist columns and headlines to drive traffic to your newspaper, because every time you get a click on a newspaper, you're earning yourself money. And if you don't get the clicks, you don't get the money. So the drive to keep these newspapers, literally to keep them afloat and keep them in business, has to be through the digital channels. So the digital channels are then using this extremism, and then the extremism then drives itself. So as you create more extremists, you create more people who are concerned about the extremists, which then come to your newspaper again the following day. And the vast majority, so much online traffic. I think social media obviously has issues, but people forget the online digital traffic of those newspapers. And even when you're looking at the headlines and the pages and the front of the pages, those are considerably less viewed in this day and age. I mean, the total circulation of all the newspapers in the UK is now less than 3 or 4 million.
Yeah, but but the online audience is huge, particularly for the Mail, and some of the columnists on the Mail remain very prominent. They're very popular online as well, and the same with the Telegraph comment articles that play well with the sort of lunatic Trump fringe in America. Yeah. But I wanted to double check what the front page. Go on.
They generate revenue every time they get a click. Those columnists, every time somebody goes to the page, there's an ad on that page. It's recorded as a view, and they will then get money for it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that's true of the LBC. I don't know if it's specifically true of the LBC website as well. It's true of everywhere.
It is, of course.
It's the way that's the way it goes. But
hang on. About you as well.
Yeah, of course you could say that about me as well. I think that's why I wind people up so much, because I'm a bigger deal than they are peddling anti-hate when they think that the only way to make any money is by peddling hate. But enough about me, Tim. You know what a modest flower I am. There's no way, is there? I'm reading this Daily Mail front page today. Night anti-hate marchers faced down the thugs, as if they are on the side of the people that were protesting last night, when even a cursory glance at what they've been doing for the last God knows how many years, almost every front page in front of me could have been on a banner in the hate marches. You know, I mean, some particularly unpleasant, some particularly hideous ones. So if it might be a little crass to ask you to put it into statistical terms, but what percent? If we put a percentage term on what role the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the Sun played in creating the ecosystem in which this explosion could occur, what number would you put on it?
Well, I would look at you're looking at well over 50-60% of it, without a question of a doubt, because it goes back, and I would also throw the BBC in there as well.
Well, certainly the lad from Lewis who wasn't Lewis launched his political career off the back of an appearance on Question Time on one of the very, very rare occasions where Nigel Farage wasn't sitting there stroking his chin. So, and the false equivalence, which we're seeing in corners of the media this week, desperate attempts to turn criminal behaviour in Birmingham by a tiny number of people into a sort of counterbalance to criminal behaviour up and down the country by thousands of, or certainly hundreds of people. There'd been an arrest as well, by the way, in Birmingham for possession of an offensive weapon, but no doubt the people who helped to incite the current riots will be swanning around the place claiming two-tier policing. 10:32 is the time. Thomas Watts has your headlines. It is 25 minutes after 25 minutes to 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The Farage riots that were expected last night didn't occur in the end, and somewhat remarkably, and you may feel somewhat insincerely, outlets that have done much to foment precisely the sort of feeling that prompted the riots in the first place are apparently celebrating. Night anti-hate marchers faced down the thugs, reports the Daily Mail. Daily Mirror, as you'd expect, goes down a similar line. But when and I don't know how helpful this is, because I honestly don't know how much attention normal people pay to what has been going on under our noses for the last 20 years. But the front pages of that same newspaper over the years that are, I mean, here's one, warning on, let me get this right, warning on UK Muslim ghettos. How many people attacking British police and setting fire to hotels in the last week are susceptible to the idea that Britain is being damaged by Muslim ghettos? Osborne's 3 million migrant bombshell. Migrant workers blow to Cameron. Betrayal of white pupils. 1.6 million migrants from the EU settle in Britain. Surrender on illegal migrants. Crushing verdict on open-door migration. I mean, not to make light of a serious subject, but these are also the people who tell us that we never ever talk about immigration. Have you noticed the people who never talk about anything else, except today, when they're talking about anything else, only ever talk about immigration? Migrants channel stroll to asylum Britain. Britain's broken borders. PM, why we must not take 3,000 migrant children. Exodus. 3 million UK workers are now foreign. Europe, the real crisis. 1 million more migrants are on their way. And then fast forward to today, and the Daily Mail is celebrating the failure of people who believed all those front pages to launch more violent riots last night. 10:37 is the time. Maori is in Chigwell. Maori, what would you like to say?
Well, quite a bit, actually.
Well, take your time.
I'm going to start with, I think, to make the assumption that British society is not a racist society is a myth.
I don't know who's made that assumption. Who's made that assumption?
But many do. I think. So let me finish first my point. I think we've made great stride forward, but there's a lot of work to be done. Now, I work with 16 to 19-year-olds. I teach A-level sociology, and actually it's a perfect place to create spaces for these young people to talk about their racialized experiences. And in fact, their race experiences within the education system has shaped their whole existence, how they interact, how they see themselves. Their whole identity is still shaped around race and racism. Now, media, yes. Absolutely, right-wing media has played an instrumental role in the riots today. But I think we need to look at that these emotions are there. The media has definitely amplified it, has certainly triggered these people to go out there and riot with violent tendencies, but the emotions are there. And what we need to safe spaces, like I do for my students, in a safe environment where they can talk about their lived experiences. Immigration, you need to look at work of Durkheim. Rapid social change will invariably cause anomie, in other words, lawlessness. Rapid immigration doesn't work. It creates fear and anxiety in people. So I'm not an advocate of the far right by any means. I'm an ethnic minority myself. But we have stifled very useful conversations about race and racism, like though it doesn't exist. Yes, I don't think it's as overt as it used to be when I was a
Well, it is this. It is this week, Maori.
This week it is, but I'm not talking
which
about
means
this
it's
week.
there all the time. Which means it's there all the time. It's just the articulations. It's just the nature of articulation that has changed.
Absolutely. So the point I'm trying to make, and I'm of Indian descent. When I go to Gujarat, globalization has a huge role to play. 15 years ago, when I went to Gujarat, that's where I'm from, I could wear jeans. I could speak in English. There was no resistance. When I go now, when I've been recently, they will shut me down because we don't want foreign influence. Our identity is at threat.
Yeah, I'm just going to steer you back, if I may, to the question that I'm asking today, which is the Tory party and the right-wing media and their responsibility for creating, if you like, the tinderbox that was ignited this week. I'm enjoying your contribution, but I do think it's important to focus on the questions that we're actually asking.
I agree with you, and I agree that they've played a fundamental role, but the point I'm making is that they can only be successful if these emotions exist in these group of people.
Clearly, you can't set fire to Tinder unless the Tinder is dry, and front pages like betrayal of white pupils and warnings on UK Muslim ghettos. I think possibly where we disagree is that they are not legitimate concerns. They are illegitimate concerns that have been created by journalism. And some of these journalists now, some of these editors are desperate to blame it all on Yaxley Lennon and the lad from Lewis who wasn't Lewis and Turning Point UK and Patriotic Alternative and Britain First. And they clearly bear more responsibility for the specific ignition of recent events. But the creation of the tinder that was dry enough to ignite, I'm afraid that goes right back to Fleet Street. Maori, thank you. Cammy's in Glasgow. Cammy, what would you like to say?
Yeah, James, how you doing, big man?
I'm good, thanks. What's on your mind?
Well, so I'm 35. I've got 2 kids, and I spend a lot of time online. I think a lot of people kind of my age do, and yes. I think there's a lot to be said. I know that Elon Musk has been in the discussions around this a lot. But there's a lot to say about websites like his, but also things like TikTok and YouTube, and how easily these far-right talking points can be fed to everyone, even if they have shown no interest in those things. The ease with which children can be shown this stuff is incredible. You can tell these platforms you aren't interested, and still weeks later you will then get these videos from your far-right talking point heads like Andrew Tate, all those kind of people saying, who's to blame? Well, it's Muslims. Who's to blame? Well, it's this, it's that, it's the other. And it's so easy for that.
And that plays into the age of some of the people that have been not just rioting but also arrested. Some of the people facing charges are children, and you wonder. I mean, what you don't know is the breakdown between people who are there for the crack, for want of a better word, and people who are there because they are buying into the hatred of foreigners or the hatred of asylum seekers or the lies about immigration. We can never break that down. But the ease with which I think it's really good that you've rung in today, because this is missing from my analysis. The ease with which a young person can disappear down a sewer of racial hatred.
It is crazy. So, James, I can tell you right now that I do not use YouTube for that kind of content, even content that particularly aligns with my politics. As someone who is more left-wing, I don't particularly use YouTube for that. Yeah. And when you use their Shorts platform, or indeed TikTok, the ease with which something like, say you're into football or video games or something like that, you can be scrolling through, and then a creator who also does that all of a sudden is now also espousing these horrible conspiracy theories or far-right things, and it comes into your feed like that. There's very little way to control it. And as a parent, I worry about it. My children are quite young, and we do take very good care to limit what they do get to use online, because I can see how dangerous this is. But I'm terrified about, as they get older, these means are there's no checks or balances in place as to what kind of stuff is being, even with the parental controls on, sometimes there's no checks and balances to what's being shown to kids. And I'm not advocating for I don't think that shutting these places down and shutting down places like Access in the UK, as some people are saying, that seems mad to me. That seems like a level of my mind has gone totally blank because I'm on the radio.
Totalitarian. Well, I think, and this is something Elon Musk has done to Twitter, certainly, is that truth should matter, and it doesn't. I mean, you could certainly have much more robust rules in place in the same way that Ofcom limits what I can and can't say, albeit that they seem to have got very soft paws when it comes to some other outlets recently. You shouldn't be able to post on Twitter something that is demonstrably untrue or that is fake. And yet, of course, conversations we've had earlier this week show that what appeared on social media was a huge part. Lies that appeared on social media are either blatant lies or disingenuous pretenses that you're just asking questions about blatant lies or calling them reports, even though they're blatant lies. That should not really be allowed until facts are established.
I think for people that are seeking out, so people who are actively seeking out the comments of the far-right commentators, fair enough, there's nothing I can do to stop them, but it's the way in which these algorithms and these massive tech companies have absolutely no problem with serving those.
It's their business model. It's not just not having a problem. It's a necessity. It's a funny thing, Cammy, because I was coming into work today, and I put on one of the playlists that Spotify suggests for you based upon your previous listening and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the couple of Inner Circle songs came on, which I happened to and I actually found myself thinking, I think that the Spotify algorithm, they just suited my mood so perfectly this morning, and they'd come up on the suggested algorithm-driven playlist, and I thought, I think that the Spotify playlist knows me better than anybody else does, and that's quite a warm thought and feeling because the music's beautiful. But it's like the positive side of what you're describing, isn't it? Is that the algorithm works in exactly the same way to bombard you with stuff that's going to get a dopamine reaction if you've gone looking for it a couple of times in the first place. Thank you. You're absolutely right. And in some ways, it's unhelpful just to do blame. Sometimes you have no choice because it is a question of blame, but that goes beyond blame. That's a question about how governments can better regulate social media. And the Irish Taoiseach yesterday, very much coming for social media companies. Keir Starmer, not just, of course, compelled to deal with Elon Musk, but also now coming under attack from Elon Musk, who is himself, despite owning the platform, very fond of sort of far-right memes and hashtags. So that these problems are immense. But we had the Gordon riots in the 18th century when Catholics were getting the blame for everything. If my memory serves, and please forgive me if it doesn't, I think the Dutch got blamed for the Great Fire of London. They were chucking foreign merchants out of the city under Queen Elizabeth I because they were stealing from the British contingent. You've got Cable Street, you've got Oswald Mosley, you've got previous iterations of precisely the same hatred that we have seen this week, going back decades, centuries. You go back to the Notting Hill race. So it can't be a game changer necessarily, but it can certainly be a game amplifier. 10:48 is the time. It's 10:50. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I was sort of looking at it was a knife attack, wasn't it, on a solicitor's firm in 2020 that saw Priti Patel being asked by colleagues to stop talking about lefty lawyers, but of course she didn't. And then one of her rivals in the current Conservative leadership battle, Robert Jenrick, has called for the phrase Allahu Akbar to become an arrestable offence. Arabic for, I think, the most widely expected translation is God is great. I think that's a little bit like calling for one of my favourite lines in Shakespeare, cry God for England, Harry and St. George in Henry V at the Battle of Agincourt. I saw Kenneth Branagh playing Henry V at Stratford, it'd be about 1984, 1985, and he did it. You know those bars in the gym at school? You know the wooden bars on the walls? Probably showing my age a bit here now, but so they did it. The set was like that, and Branagh was extraordinary. He was climbing up. It was like, have you watched the speed climbing at the Olympics? It was like that, actually, except obviously not as amazing. The speed climbing at the Olympics is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I'm hoping there's a facility for speed climbing in Brentford. But I saw Branagh do it, and he did it. I think he was dangling from the very top of the bars when he shouted, cry God for England, Harry and St. George. And it was magnificent. But, of course, under Robert Jenrick's glorious rule, that's the sort of thing you could get arrested for if you said it in Arabic. That's just bizarre. So the question of whether or not Conservative politicians could contribute to this climate of hatred, this climate of violence, is still being answered today. 10:52 is the time. Abbas is in Redbridge. Abbas, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. Good morning. It's a great show, as always.
It's all right.
I totally agree with you that, if you have people in society like our politicians, like the media, who keep drying, as you say, this tinder, then it doesn't take very much more than a spark to just, create a huge flame. And this is what's actually happened. You look at all of the stories that are presented as facts, when in reality, the data actually is something that is completely, opposite to what's being presented. But nobody seems to care. I mean, we have Suella Braverman and others who keep talking about grooming gangs as if somehow this is exclusive to Asian, Pakistani, Muslim men. Then you have the works of Dr. Ella Cockbain, a lecturer in security and crime science at the University College London, who comes out with great data, great reports that actually say, well, that's not true. They're not overrepresented at all. In this particular area, in this particular group, in this particular definition of this particular crime, they might be. But as an overall abuse, 1 in 7 women in our country has gone through some form of sexual abuse.
And of course, what you also remind us of is that the disgusting crimes that you allude to, very much a sort of area in which Yaxley Lennon has operated by telling people that the stories have been kept out of the news, despite the fact that he only knows about them because they are in the news, and then he turns up at court and runs the risk of disrupting the actual trials of the criminals. But those particular crimes have nothing to do with illegal immigration. So, this plaintive cry that we're only concerned about illegal immigration has nothing to do with crimes committed by people that were quite possibly born here. I don't know if depressing is quite the right word, but even when you do this for a living, this is one of those subjects where you look under a rock and there are 1,000 more rocks, isn't it? You just sort of think, and so briefly, when the Daily Mail today has a front page celebrating the failure or the non-appearance of race riots last night, what are they playing at? Night anti-hate marchers faced down the thugs, whereas the thugs would agree with all of the rancid Daily Mail front pages that I've been reading out all morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's just bad reporting. It's just the way the words are presented. I mean, in life, we're told it's not what you say, it's how you say things. And the newspapers and the way they construct these arguments, the way that they construct their headlines, they're all to create division and hatred and just simply feed people's predispositions that have already been, instilled and installed by our politicians, by other media.
Well, stop the boats as well, of course, becomes, it may well be a valid policy aim, but to turn it into a slogan and plaster it across the front of your lectern while failing to do it, what response do you expect from people who've been persuaded that this is an urgent emergency and then you fail to do anything about it? Abbas, thank you. 10:55 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we are looking at the two articles that drew me, I told you earlier. One rather brilliant analysis in the London Review of Books, pointing out, among other things, that demonstrations demanding a ceasefire in Gaza were smeared as hate marches by Suella Braverman when she was Home Secretary. And I haven't seen much from her on what has been happening recently. If you're going to call demonstrations calling for a ceasefire hate marches, what on earth do you call what we've seen in recent days? Nabil is in Hemel Hempstead. Nabil, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. So I'd like to touch on the topic that I raised a few days ago around these, rights could possibly be seen as Farage rights. I kind of agree with that. And yes. I also think it's not just an isolated message that was been put.
Oh, hang on. Speaking of Farage, there was a clip I should have played yesterday, but I'd forgotten about it, actually. Just to make your point for you.
I think it's legitimate to say that if people feel they've lost control completely, and we have lost control of our borders completely as members of the European Union, and if people feel that voting doesn't change anything, then violence is the next step.
Gosh. Sorry, Nabil, you were saying?
Yeah. So really coming to the point, James, I think it's not just an isolated case of Farage putting a video up with those questioning kind of narrative that he had in the video, but I think it's a constant case of kind of inundating the media with certain messages, not just across a few months, but, decades. And I'm not just talking about Farage, I think...
No, well, we're not today. That was actually yesterday's show. We're talking about all the other outlets today. And I do this for a living. I probably spend more time than anyone else in the British media chronicling it. And even I can't believe just how many front pages there are when I do a quick search for, kind of things like migrants try to kill Brit truckers, deadly cost of our open borders, 1.6 migrants from the EU settle in Britain, migrant mothers cost NHS 1.3 billion. And that's why these journalists are hidebound this week. What the hell are they supposed to write about people who have responded to these calls to arms with arms?
Yeah. And I also think, a very valid point you made in your last call. Where are people the likes of Sohaila Braverman and Priti Patel? The fact they were like...
Well, Patel's condemned the riots, but of course she ignored colleagues when they asked her to stop using the phrase lefty lawyers in the aftermath of an attack on lawyers.
Yeah. And obviously, considering from 7th of October last year, we had these hate march labeling that was done pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And now, like just yesterday, I saw one of the interviews where, it was said any chanting of Allahu Akbar needs to be banned. So again, we just...
Well, that was another one of the Conservative leadership contenders, obviously vying for a very specific part of the membership, and that part of the membership would consider a promise to outlaw the phrase Allahu Akbar attractive, which means that presumably I'd get into trouble if I walked out into the street and started shouting God is great at the top of my voice. Or would it be one rule for Muslims and another rule for everybody else? And is that precisely the audience to which Robert Jenrick is playing? I'll leave you to puzzle that over for yourself. It's coming up to 11 o'clock. The idea that the responsibility for events of recent weeks lies with extremist fringes, or indeed mainstream extremists, is clearly not fair. I don't know how you balance it out, though, because they're all to blame. It's a cartoon that you may have forgotten as well. That's what I mean about looking under a rock and finding 1,000 more rocks. 2015 in the Daily Mail, the sign says "Welcome to Europe," and the human beings depicted in the picture are all portrayed as Muslims, as women wearing face veils and men in Middle Eastern dress, although they're mostly portrayed in shadows. And then there are rats, actual rats, in the Daily Mail, on a cartoon, rats scurrying over what is depicted as the border of Europe or the border of the UK, whichever reading you prefer, November the 17th, 2015. And it was pointed out at the time that the Viennese newspapers in 1938 were pro-Nazi newspapers, were using rats to portray Jewish citizens. The use. So 2015, you go back to when Dacre was editor of the paper, and it crosses the desk of a couple of executives, and nobody says, we can do the cartoon where all of the people coming into Europe look like they're Muslims, even though that isn't technically true. There are not open borders for people coming into the European Union from elsewhere. The open borders issue is for travel between European Union countries, and the UK was never in Schengen anyway. But let's just take the rats out of the picture, shall we? Champ, can we just take the cartoonist who worked under the name Mac, M-A-C, can we just take the rats out of the picture? We can still do the racism and the misinformation, but can we just take the rats out of the... No, didn't take the rats out of the cartoon. And then I don't know if they've started publishing the hand-wringing faux inquiries into how the scenes we've seen in the last week could have happened, but they have attempted to publish a front page today celebrating the non-appearance last night of riots conducted by people who would have bought 110% into that vermin depiction. 5 minutes after 11 is the time. Matt's in Dorchester. Matt, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I kind of disagree slightly on who's to blame for the riots. I think I'm not defending the Daily Mail, Jesus Christ, but they're always going to be...
I don't think you can say that anymore. Robert Jenrick will have you arrested.
Yeah. Fair.
Oh no, it's all right. It's just if you say it in Arabic that you'll have a problem.
Yeah. No, I can't speak that language, unfortunately. But no, I think that they're always going to get vile hate and spew from the right to whip people up. It's kind of their mantra. But the left, and by the left in this country, it's probably the Labour Party that are the strongest voices. Every time you hear an immigration debate, the right say, we need to stop immigrants, we need to do this and that. And the left kind of stay silent. Yeah. Keir Starmer made a calculated...
Or join in almost.
Well, yeah, all that, yeah, even worse. But if Keir Starmer at the start of the election came out and said immigrants benefit our economy, there's no evidence that an increase in crime is anything to do with immigration, that's not the problem facing our society, it's this and this, he might not have won the election. So he's decided not to say it. But the riots are... when you have one side of the argument saying that the riots are... they haven't said it's good, but they've implied it strongly.
Legitimate concerns.
Exactly. Yeah. Nigel Farage has said everything but the riots are great.
He certainly hasn't told them to stop, has he?
Exactly that. But but Keir Starmer now is coming out strongly against the actions, but he's never come out strongly against the idea. And when you've got one side of the argument not being put across by the people that should put it across, then they should take just as much blame, in my opinion.
I mean, there are plenty of people in the Labour Party, some of them quite senior, who do what you call for. But Starmer's decision, his what described as ruthless caution during the campaign, I don't think I can find fault with that. And what I found depressing about it personally, or disappointing about it personally, is that he will be accused of all of those things anyway, even if he doesn't say them. So, Johnson would accuse him of wanting to throw open our borders or wanting to rejoin the European Union, even if he hadn't said any of those things. So there was a little bit of me that wondered whether he had nothing to lose. Whether you say it or not, you're going to be accused of it. So why don't you speak to your principals and actually explain? Because somebody in this country is going to have to explain the very simple relationship of reliance between our economic health and immigration. And then the next chapter of that book is the demographic changes that we're undergoing with regards to age and the necessity of people to come here and breathe oxygen into our social care structures. But they won't do it. They won't do it because of the same ecosystem that has spawned these riots, if you like, the non-violent repercussions of the creation of that ecosystem, the response from people who would never throw a petrol bomb at a police officer in their lives, but who have absorbed the same rhetoric, seen the same front pages, listened to the same demagogues and populist liars. That environment is the one that Starmer is frightened of tackling, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
No, it's a
helpful of it anyway, but
helpful reminder. And indeed, there was a Labour MP singling out a hotel in her constituency in a speech in the House of Commons just a couple of weeks ago, who then had to deal with the aftermath of that hotel actually being set fire to. So, I don't think it's helpful to turn this into a footballification issue, although the massive majority of responsibility clearly lies with the people who have told the rioters that all immigrants are awful, all Muslims are evil, and that all crimes are committed by them. 9 minutes after 11 is the time. Alan is in Ipswich. Alan, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, James. First of all, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Suella Braverman is a perfect example. If people genuinely act on the opinions of Suella Braverman and go out on the street and do things because they've listened to Suella Braverman, that's just absolute rubbish because people don't.
No one said they have.
Well, what you're saying is that people in positions of responsibility, let's forget about Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage for a second, but people that are in...
Well, Farage is an MP. That's a position of responsibility.
I'm happy to talk about him. I'll go on to that in a second. But people like Suella Braverman, and then you mentioned about the Daily Mail and the Sun, people that... What you're saying is that people listen to Suella Braverman, they read the Daily Mail and they read the Sun, and they form their opinions on what they read in the Daily Mail and what they read in the Sun. The United Kingdom is a fantastic country, and people have got brains in their heads and they're intelligent. And they may read the Daily Mail.
Well, they're not all intelligent, are they?
Well, I don't know.
Well, of course you know. 50% of the population is of below, or 49.9% of the population is of below average intelligence.
Well, that's a statistic I've never heard of, but I'll have to take your word for it.
Well, let's just think about it, shall we? What's half of 100%?
50.
Right, and what is an average of 100? What's the midpoint of 100?
What is this, a maths test or something? Or I'm not really sure where you're going with this.
Well, I'm just pointing out to you that what I just said isn't something controversial. What's half of 100?
50.
Right, so what is going to be below half of 100?
49.999.
So what percentage of the population is of below average intelligence?
Yeah, but where are you getting that statistic from?
Where do you think I'm getting it from?
I have no idea. You tell me.
I'm just counting. I'm just counting.
So that's your opinion that 49.999% of the population of the United Kingdom are below average intelligence?
No, it's not my opinion. It's a mathematical fact.
Where is this mathematical fact published?
Well, you don't need to publish it because 50% is half of 100%.
Yeah, but you're telling me.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go around in circles. You're telling me that
but remember, you're here to tell me that people are intelligent.
Yes, they are.
Okay, carry on.
Everybody's good at something. Trust me.
Yeah.
They are, and to say that people are below half the population is below intelligence is quite insulting.
Below average intelligence, Alan.
Well, either right is insulting.
To who?
I really think it is.
To who?
Well, to the population of the United Kingdom.
Right.
I mean, you gave us this statistic a couple of days ago when you said 80% of asylum seekers
between 70 and 80. It might be slightly higher, but I was reading from Hounslow Council's report into its own asylum seekers at the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's fine. It is 80%, right?
Is
of
it?
Asylum seekers are granted asylum.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is there's 562,000 people a year apply for asylum, right?
I don't think that's true.
Well, it is, because it's on the government website. So unless the government website are lying, which who knows?
There's 562,000 people a year apply for asylum.
Not a year, last year.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
Of those 562,000, 400,000 were Ukrainian nationals.
Yeah.
The rest were from Hong Kong.
What is the point you think you're making?
Well, because you made this thing that all these people in these hotels, that 80% of them are going to be...
No, I was reading from Hounslow Borough Council's report into the asylum seekers in its own hotels at the time.
Well, I'm sure Hounslow Council up there...
It's on my Twitter account. You can read it for yourself.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sure Hounslow Council up there with the United Nations and in their diligence and their reporting. I've only heard good things about them.
Right.
But,
let's not get distracted, mate. Let's focus back in on why you rang in. The phone in we're having is how much responsibility do the front pages designed to turn readers against Muslims, against immigrants, previously against the EU citizens that wanted to come here to work, and politicians using phrases like lefty lawyers and talking about stopping the boats. How much responsibility do they bear for the furious violence and racism that we've seen in various cities and towns over the last few days?
None.
None at all?
No.
Okay.
Do you want me to explain why?
Yeah.
Good. I can pick anything up in a library. I can pick any newspaper up. I can pick up the New Worker, which is a communist newspaper. I can pick up the BNP paper. I can read the Sun. I can read the Telegraph. I am a person just like you, James. And
I think we've got slightly different attitudes to mathematics, but apart from that, I'm sure we're very similar.
But I do agree with you. We do have different opinions on mathematics. That's something for.
Can't really have different opinions on mathematics.
No, you're right. You can't. It's about the only thing you can't have different opinions on.
But you've managed.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know what different opinions on mathematics I have got compared to you. Because you haven't really given me an example.
Well, okay. I'll go on back to the library. I think we were in.
Yeah. So people pick up books. They read things. They read newspapers. They form their own opinion. Just because a Daily Mail tells you something, and you read it, it doesn't mean that you then act on that. So when Suella Braverman says what she says,
what bit is it that you're talking? Because Suella Braverman is an old example to use on this one. I've talked about her today mostly because she described demonstrations calling for a ceasefire as hate marches. But I'm more interested in. Let's just focus on this cartoon, which uses Nazi imagery of rats to depict people coming into Europe in 2015. How does that not create in the minds of people the notion that people coming into Europe from overseas are undesirable?
Well, so you're telling me that people looked at that cartoon?
I'm just asking you a question. How could anybody look at that and not know that it's designed to portray people coming into Europe as undesirable? Now, I think if I've understood you correctly, are you trying to tell me that not every single person who sees that cartoon is going to end up thinking that immigrants are vermin?
Well, they've probably already got an opinion in their head. You know, people don't read things and watch things,
right?
And take that as read.
So why do they exist then?
What do you mean, why do they exist?
Why do you think these outlets exist if they're not trying to influence people's thoughts and opinions? Why do you think I come to work? Why do you think I come to work every day?
Well, you go to work every day like everybody else in the media goes to work today. The reason I rang you is listening to LBC.
But why do you think we do all this if we're not trying to influence people's thoughts and opinions?
I'm sure you shouldn't be trying to influence people's thoughts and opinions.
Right.
That's not what the media's there for.
But that's my job. My job is
your job isn't to. So you're telling me your job is to influence people?
My job is to try and highlight reality for people who seem to be a bit baffled by it. No, it's not. It's not my reality. We're going to get back to the numbers again. It's not my reality. I'm describing the definition of less than half.
49.999. I've already told you that.
Yeah. So who is to blame then for the people throwing petrol bombs at the police?
We're going to get into slightly different territory here.
Well, this is the whole point of the phone-in, Alan.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Well, I'm answering the question.
Yeah.
I can understand why young white English men are angry. I can. Right?
What about old white English men?
Well, old white English men then.
Middle-aged?
Ancient, middle-aged. Yeah, anyone over the age of 18.
Just to clarify one thing, because I hope you don't think this is alternative realities. There were 67,337 applications for asylum made in 2023.
You're quick on Google, aren't you?
Yeah. No, 10 people have just sent it to me. But you came on air with a number that's not true, so it's my job to correct that, you see.
Well, I read it off the government website. So
yeah, but you clearly misunderstood what you were reading.
No, I didn't misunderstand it.
Okay. So let's go back to who is responsible for stoking the violence we've seen this week. And we're running out of time, Alan, unfortunately. But go on, give me your sort of top three or something.
Top three of what?
Individuals or institutions responsible for stoking the racist violence that we've been looking at all week.
Well, I can tell you straight away, there aren't a top three. There's none. People are people.
Right. You know, people are definitely people. That is definitely true.
I mean, from what you've been saying, you're saying that the majority of people in Clacton are racist because they vote as Nigel Farage in.
I haven't mentioned Clacton today.
No, but Nigel Farage is the MP of Clacton.
Yes, he is.
So how come he got in then?
Because people voted for him.
Right. So, but you keep going on about the Farage riots.
Yes.
You came up with that phrase.
No, sadly I didn't actually. I wish I had. It's just one of those things that popped up on Twitter, mate.
Well, so I do apologise. So it was you.
You don't have to apologise. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, no, because I.
So the people that voted for Nigel Farage are attracted by his racism. Obviously, yes. I don't think there's anything controversial.
So therefore,
about that.
the majority of people that voted in Clacton are racist.
No. This is the point.
You just said they're attracted by their racism.
Yes, of course they are, because they believe the kind of exaggerations and lies that are on all of the front pages that we've been talking about for the last hour and 20 minutes.
People that live in Clacton haven't got the intelligence, and they're just sheep, and they just
on the contrary, mate, the effort put in by the billionaire-owned media into persuading them that their real enemies are not unfair distribution of wealth or inherited privilege or people who own 500 houses and rent them out. Their real enemies are people crossing the channel in dinghies or the Muslims living over the road. The effort put into persuading those people of these racist lies is absolutely enormous. I've got nothing but sympathy for most of the people that have fallen for it. Obviously, Alan, I don't have any sympathy for the people who turn that into a sort of murderous rage that sees them setting fire to hotels and throwing petrol bombs at the police. Does that help?
Well, on that I do agree. I do think it is a top-down thing, and people do occasionally. I mean, there are people that are making a lot of money out of this that have already got lots of money. I do agree with that, but people do genuinely have grave concerns. You know, there's horrendous poverty in this country, and people are desperate to make ends meet.
Yes. So why would you blame people with even less than you for the size of your pot?
Because if I'm sat in a high-rise block and I can't afford to put my heating on, and can't afford to pay my council tax, and I'm looking across the road at Holiday Inn, where all the lights are on and the heating's on in the middle of winter, full of people that have come over here on boats, then I would be annoyed.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
And how do you know about the Holiday Inn?
Well, I've just named. It could be any hotel. It could be there are.
And Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage 4 years ago filmed himself in one of these hotels, making some of the points that you're just making to create precisely the levels of anger and fury that you've just articulated. And when those levels of anger and fury are put through some particularly hateful lenses, people end up setting fire to those hotels. So do you see the relationship now between political figures and media rhetoric and the decision by human beings to set fire to hotels full of people?
No.
But you've just described it to me.
No, but I don't. They didn't go and do that because Nigel Farage happened to film himself in a hotel a few years ago.
No, but the anger about people in hotels, whose experience, if you read that report by Hounslow Borough Council that I referred you to earlier, whose experience is far from pleasant, the anger about their existence for having lights has been very, very carefully cultivated and stoked. And it culminates in people setting fire to the hotels.
Well, but again, I can understand why people are really angry.
Yeah, well, I can too. That's what the whole show has been dedicated to, because of the effort put into making them angry. And if you can't afford to heat your home or turn the lights on, you should really be looking at the economic situation in the country and not blaming it on people who are desperate to live anywhere but the hotel that they've been put up in by a government that has ceased to process asylum applications, of which you can now go away and check your numbers. There was a tiny fraction of what you thought last year. But you see, you just to clarify, Alan, at the end of this conversation, you haven't changed your mind about anything at all, have you?
Well, what by talking to you?
Yeah.
Well, why would I?
Exactly. It's 11:22. It is 24 minutes after 11. Or is it? Because they are, after all, just numbers. Michael's in Brent. Michael, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Gosh, we are in such strange times that it almost seems to sort of echo along like a distant past that we thought we'd left behind 80 years ago. But it seems these things come around in cycles, don't they?
Yes, they do, and there is nothing new under the sun. I've been on a crash course of the Gordon riots myself, because as a Catholic, it would have been my turn to be in the firing line in the way that Muslims are today. But yeah, I think we thought that perhaps we'd moved away from some of these uglier ideas, but here we are, smack back in the middle of them.
But you know, I had this really upsetting conversation with my husband yesterday. He's a pale-skinned Indian chap. We've been married for 10 years now. He's born and bred in England and in the UK. And, there were rumours about riots that might be taking place in Harrow, which is near where we live. And he was at work in central London. And we had a phone conversation about whether or not we were worried about him coming home by himself, if he'd be safe or not. And we actually had this conversation where he said to me, well, I've not been in the sun a lot recently, so my skin is quite pale right now. Maybe people will just think I'm Spanish and I'll be safe.
What a remarkable conversation to be having.
And this is 2024, it's just baffling that haven't we learned from this history? We have learned that this side of history is the losing side. So why are we revisiting these harmful parts of our history? Well, we're supposed to move on from them and get better.
I think in answering your question, which I don't think is rhetorical, we actually look back over this entire programme, don't we? Because it explains why the Daily Mail's front page today is ostensibly celebrating the failure or the non-appearance of riots that would have been in many ways inspired by precisely the sort of journalism they've been doing for the last 20 years. It's a business model until somebody loses an eye. Do you see what I mean? It's like you just poke it, stoke it. Just keep it on the boil, keep it on the simmer. It will never explode. And the longer we keep it on the boil, the richer we get, the more papers we sell, the more clicks we get, the more we attract, the more seats we can win in Parliament. But we never actually want it to. We want your votes. We don't want your petrol bombs. And of course, they can't control that. And the social media, I guess, to again pick up on something that's been on the programme a lot, the social media takes some of the control out of the hands of the traditional exercisers of power. So that's why we find ourselves in, as you described, both familiar and unfamiliar territory this week.
Yeah, and I'd like to respond to your point about the business of it all. These lies in the media, they basically operate as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
The papers need to make a profit, and a certain segments of society, they constitute basically a retained clientele. And it's always been the case that it's much easier to tell a lie than it is to disprove a lie. I mean, your previous caller was a perfect example of that. He came online and said there were 840,000.
I forget the precise number.
But it's less than 10% of that. And you were able to say to him, actually, the fact is it's 67,000, which is less than 10%. But that didn't disprove what's called a phantasm, right? Like a story, it feels true, and therefore it becomes.
And I want it to be true. Oddly, even though it makes me cross or frightened or angry, I also want it to be true. That's the psychologically fascinating element of all. And it applies to loads of things, doesn't it? And it's amazing how many roads lead from the riots back to the anti-vax movement, Michael. I don't know if you've come across that, but why would you want to believe that, I don't know, what's his name? Bill Gates was trying to control your personality, or that 5G masts were seeking to influence your behaviour, or that vaccines weren't necessary, or that everyone. Why would you want to believe all this weird, frightening stuff? And I've never quite got to the bottom of that, but it applies right across the board, doesn't it? Why would you want to believe that the people in the Holiday Inn over the road have got a better quality of life than you have, when they're living on a pittance of whatever it is you get, even if you're at the lowest end of the universal credit receipt?
And they're not even prepared. As the propagators of these lies, they're not even prepared for the consequences. What comes?
Well, that's
after.
What we're seeing this week, I think.
And it reminds me, when the first atomic bomb was dropped, the first thing that the man who dropped the bomb, he said after there was a moment of silence, and then the first thing he said, "My God, what have I done?" Because
is that definitely true, or is that just from the film?
Well, yeah, it might be a phantasm. it might be a story.
It speaks to something that's inside all of us, doesn't it? I think, and that's the thing. Some of the stuff that we've seen this week is not inside all of us. It is confusing and frightening at the same time. Michael, thank you. I'm cracking on because it is time for the very latest news headlines with Thomas Watts. It is 33 minutes after 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Mode, mean, or median? How many people have completely lost the will to live? As I say those three words, I was obviously deploying the median definition of average. 34 minutes after 11. Back to... I listened, yesterday's show about the Farage riots, or the Farage riots, whichever you prefer, was interesting. And illuminating, and we'd forgotten or simply missed some of the evidence of just how mealy-mouthed Nigel Farage is when he claims absolutely nothing to do with me, despite having relied upon a man facing trial for sex trafficking and organised crime for his details, for his facts. And then, of course, with all the clips of him talking about violence or picking up guns in pursuit of his own political aims. But the idea that you can pin all this on one person, it's why we wondered yesterday whether that hashtag was entirely fair, because you can't pin it all on one person. No more could you pin it on Farage than he can pin it on, as he's tried to do, Yaxley Lennon. I don't know what the phrase is for peas in a pod turning on each other. Is it rats fighting in a sack, I suppose, or a circular firing squad or something like that? But what I don't want to happen is for the people who are mainstream to get off the hook, you know? The people from the Daily Mail, the people from the Daily Express, the Sun, the Telegraph, latterly even the Times. Since Tony Gallagher became the editor of the Times, they've embraced many of the tactics that he learned at, wait for it, the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, and the Sun. So their friends, the politicians they tend to shill for, the client journalists, the politicians that they have promoted bear huge responsibility for the creation of this ecosystem. And those politicians would include your Priti Patel, talking about lefty lawyers, the whole emphasis on immigration, particularly on illegal immigration, which is a tiny, well, not a tiny, but a small fraction of the overall numbers, which allows them to avoid the conversation about why the overall numbers need to be high. I'll tell you something that's quite interesting. I think it's going to come down a lot next year, partly for the reasons that our friend in Ipswich alluded to. A lot of the immigration to this country has been because of extraordinary circumstances. So the highest ever figure the country has ever seen, despite the fact that Farage promised us, and everyone else, Johnson and the rest of them, promised you that Brexit would reduce these numbers, is down to issues like Hong Kong and Ukraine. So the first figures that are announced under Keir Starmer, remember what Napoleon said about the importance of lucky generals. The first figures that come out under Starmer, I think, will be measurable, notably lower than the last figures that came out under Sunak. But it won't be as a result of policy. It will just be a result of the sort of ebb and flow of human history. The conversation about why immigration needs to be high is, as an earlier caller pointed out, the conversation that no one really seeks to have. And no one in any of the two major parties, at least, seeks to have. And this is an English problem. This doesn't happen in Scotland. A bit like riots. 11:37 is the time. Oh, hang on. Let's not just gloss over that point. It's not true in Scotland. And that's part of the reason why there aren't any riots in Scotland. Although there's plenty of racism and wrongness, and it may well be that some riots occur. But many of the problems we've been talking about this week are English problems. George is in Greenwich. George, what would you like to say?
Hey, James. Literally, the thing is that your focus has been on the mainstream media, but I think you're missing the point of. I feel like the government needs to intervene and step up, especially working with their European partners, on how much power the CEO, or rather the owner of X, is wielding at the moment, because I feel like he's done much, much worse in the recent weeks or months than what we are seeing in the mainstream media. He's been involved, literally encouraging rioters to go out. He has given a platform to these misinformation.
I don't know if he's encouraged, right? We have to be slightly careful. I'm likely to be too unduly troubled by this little radio show, but I don't think he encouraged rioters to go out.
James, someone tweeting...
Are you talking about Musk now? Are you talking about Musk?
Yes.
Right. No,
yes,
I don't...
Someone tweeting saying that a civil war is imminent.
Yes. But that's not saying go and... Listen, don't make me split hairs. That's not the same as saying go and fight a civil war, is it?
You're bringing this conversation into people's... So let me say something, James. This morning I did apply for a job in Singapore. I arrived here just under 20 years ago in this country. I arrived with my little sister and my mother as a refugee family, and Britain gave us a life. They gave me an education in the last financial year, which is 2022-2023, or not last, but 2022-2023. I paid just over 32k in my as tax and NI from my personal income, and that's because I'm doing well in my role, in my career. Britain has given me the opportunity. They gave me a chance to a new life. And by the time I arrived in this country, it was a very welcoming country. I loved everything about this country, especially the social inclusion that a refugee I ended up living or having to access areas where there was middle class and upper class and whatever. And I was inspired to go into education, to educate myself and go out there and change the world, which ironically my career is literally building social housing for the Brits who are claiming that I came to steal their jobs. But because I believe in social inclusion, I believe I have strong beliefs to it. But now this country has become very, very unwelcoming. There's been a growing...
You feel it personally long before this week, because you didn't just suddenly decide to apply for a job in Singapore.
This has been happening for years. For years, probably since just after Brexit, we started questioning.
I almost don't want you to say that, because I know you're right. But if I was a Brexit voter, and whether I've come to regret my vote yet or not, the idea that I ushered in this tidal wave of hatred that I find, and look, there'll be plenty of people who voted for Brexit who are just as disgusted and disturbed by what we've seen this week as you and I are. But the idea that they bear responsibility for it must be something that I think is at risk of alienating them rather than drawing them into the conversation. But I can't tell you not to say it, because I think it's true. It's just an uncomfortable truth, isn't it?
James, this is the problem with the United Kingdom. We are very reactionary, that we ignore the root cause of things. Everything, we just gloss over every problem. And then as we progress, we start being reactionary to any problem that pops up. Now the focus is, for the last 2 weeks or for the last 1 week, what's been happening in the UK. But if you ask me or anyone of ethnic minority, when did you start having a feeling that Britain is not welcoming anymore? They will say it's been years in the making.
And that is why we're talking about the creation of an ecosystem in which this explosion of violence could happen. So here's a question, and it's a bit of a hobby horse for me, as you know, George. Without Brexit and the deliberate weaponisation of, at the very least, xenophobia that was deployed to get it over the line, and this brings us back, of course, to Daily Mail front pages, without Brexit, would there have been riots this week?
That's a very good question, George.
Is it a very good question, or is it actually a very bad question? I'm not sure, George. I've got to be honest with you.
It is a very good question, but I think it wouldn't. What happened is that we platformed people like Nigel Farage. In fact, I was looking at some of the other countries where they have censure motions in Parliament, where someone like Nigel Farage will be censured for his involvement of what happened last week. But
he is adamant that had absolutely nothing to do with him, of course. But
he's
been adamant about a lot of things over the years.
Yeah, he blamed Andrew Tate. That literally, he got the information.
I think he's blamed Stephen Yaxley Lennon as well, subsequently or previously. But on we go.
And those are the things that keep on happening. There's another Labour MP who used parliamentary privilege to speak about a hotel that happened to be attacked literally last week as well. And those are the things that the government should come in, and there should be a proactive approach in how we can tackle these problems. Politicians using the platforms, we're focusing so much on the media, but politicians are using X and other social media platforms to go ahead and do this. There is another investigation which was done by a journalist, very brilliant, and it said that the majority of the hate that's been coming from the far right has been on Meta, and they've been paying so much Meta has been getting so much ad revenue from the far right.
Are we sure about that?
Yeah, there is a brilliant, I forgot his name, but he's on Twitter. He's a journalist. He's done some great work on.
So it all comes down to them. They won't do anything that involves surrendering money unless they have to. The social media companies. And so I think you're right, George. I think that is going to be the next front, isn't it? It's going to be the next big issue, because it's all very well getting upset with these disgusting front pages and these racist cartoons and these bigoted journalists and politicians, but the lies that can spread on social media, and even things that aren't lies, footage that's real, but on an account that is very carefully curated to create the idea that people like George, who came here from West Africa, doesn't work in social housing, but he's a criminal because he is black. I don't know whether you've come across these accounts. There's millions of them just dedicated to crimes committed by people of colour or crimes committed by members of ethnic minorities, and it is very deliberately designed to create the myth that you can't trust people who don't look like you. And the riots that we've seen this week are built upon, among many other things, the notion that you can't trust people that don't look like you. In fact, they are so untrustworthy that you should set fire to them and almost envy Alan, I think it was in Ipswich, almost envy his belief that you almost somehow you're born with these impulses to set fire to hotels, or they're a result of seeing the lights on, as opposed to a very, very, very carefully and deliberately cultivated harvesting of hatred. Directed at, originally, people who don't look like you. But it moves from there. I used to read that Martin Niemöller poem on the show all the time. Do you remember? 10, 15 years ago. I was obsessed with it. The one about first they came for the trade unionists, and I did not do anything because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the homosexuals, and I did not do anything because I was not homosexual. Then they came for the journalists, and I did not do anything because I was not a journalist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not do anything because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was nobody left to help me. I've got that completely wrong, by the way. I'm not claiming to have recited it completely from memory, but I wonder why I used to reference that poem all the time when it was a warning, as opposed to now when I hardly ever mention it, and it's becoming a description. 11:49 is the time. It's Thursday, and this has been one of those rare weeks where we've only talked about one issue. So what's that? 3, 6, 9, 11 hours, I think, talking about the riots by 12 noon today. And after 12 noon today, we will do something else. It is Thursday, and it is time, therefore, for Mystery Hour, which I'm looking forward to enormously. Actually, it should be a lot of fun. Before that, I have time to get through a few more calls. I'm looking at the reasons behind it, because I think something's going to happen, and I think we'll all probably fall into this trap because we're all a little bit gaslit. We live in a gaslit country. Certainly my profession is enormously gaslit because I've got friends, I've got family members who work on some of the outlets that I hold responsible for. I think of some of the people that I've worked with over the years who are completely responsible for the creation of this horrible ecosystem in which we find ourselves. So none of us are, or hardly any of us, are exempt. I suppose you can comfort yourself with the thought, well, at least you've called it out. You certainly haven't gone along with it. You haven't been complicit. But the danger of blaming it all on the obvious fascist or extremist agitators, the people whose entire business models depend upon whipping up hate and then asking for donations, whether you actually spend those donations on legal fees or not doesn't, I don't think, seem to matter much. But that's a business model. And if you're really, really skint, you're going to have to get yourself sent to jail again. So you can pin it all on them Farage, very, very unhappy with his misjudgment this week on where public opinion would go or what public opinion would do. But he has a very, very long history of emerging almost unscathed from behaviour that would end anybody else's career. So I wouldn't count any particular chickens there. But the finger is unlikely to point with the precision that it should at politicians, one of whom, Robert Jenrick, today is under fire for essentially trying to criminalise the phrase "God is great" if you shouted it in Arabic. Now, I know why that phrase can be frightening. It can be frightening because it is also sometimes shouted by Islamist terrorists. But if a Catholic terrorist shouted, "I love God," would a Conservative politician in the United Kingdom in 2024, even if 100 Catholic terrorists, if every IRA terrorist ever to draw breath in the last 50 years had screamed at the top of his lungs, "I love God," or "God is great," would Robert Jenrick, a Conservative politician in 2024 in the United Kingdom, seek to criminalise the shouting of "God is great" for everybody? Of course he wouldn't. So I don't know whether you call that racism or Islamophobia or anything else. But you have to ask yourself whether even this week honest Bob Jenrick is chucking a little bit of petrol on the fires that have been burning in Rotherham and Tamworth and everywhere else. Hull. I think he is. That was the conversation we were going to have in the second hour of the programme today, but I'm afraid I got rather bombarded with people keen to answer the question about where responsibility lies. Honest Bob Jenrick painting over those murals. You know, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I probably shouldn't set fire to that hotel because they are human beings just like you and me. And then you think, no, they're not. They don't even deserve murals in processing centres for unaccompanied child asylum seekers. Pass me the matches. I don't know. Maybe that's not fair. But I think once you dehumanise the journey towards abuse and violence towards utterly innocent, entirely blameless human beings, it must get shorter, mustn't it? If you dehumanise those people, then violently minded bigots, their journey towards violence becomes shorter. Joshua's in York. Joshua, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thank you for today. And I admire your patience with some of those people.
Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of reply to the guy previously who said that young white men have a reason to be angry.
Yes.
And I think he's kind of, half, or maybe I don't know what the percentage of young white men in this country is.
Stop it.
But he's a percentage of the way there. But he just needs to include everyone else apart from the kind of, 1% or whatever who are profiting massively from the wealth inequality that is driving all of this. So I think that's my point, really. I mean, the media, they are definitely responsible, this kind of drip of things which they're never held accountable for. But there was someone else previously who said, the emotional kind of basis needs to be there to be set alight, but it's not just emotional. Yeah. It's material. The material conditions are there, and that's always happened.
So as long as you've got the poverty, then the tinder remains dry.
Absolutely, it's always
or the inequality. It is, isn't it? It's turning poor white people against poor brown people. That's the trick. That's the magic touch for the establishment or whatever you want to call it, the vested interest.
Yeah, I mean the quote legitimate concerns that people have. What I see people saying anyway is always, they're getting houses. I'm not. They're getting benefits. I'm not.
Cars.
Yeah.
Shops.
Yeah.
Businesses.
So it's just envy that's not realistic, but you can understand it from the perspective of someone who has very little and is struggling even more. And also, I wonder if there's maybe, I'm not sure about this, but there's kind of like a neurological basis for this, as in when people are very poor for a very long time, they're under stress. I think, there's research that suggests that, your brain function is affected by that. And then you're more susceptible to this kind of propaganda.
Well, it's too early to even speak of sympathy for some of the people being locked up. But I think that analysis probably applies to some of them. There is almost a kind of, how the hell did I end up caught up in this, from some of the testimony given by some of them. And of course they would say that, wouldn't they? But you're right. I think that the precursors, the preconditions for certain types of behaviour are going to be quite varied, aren't they, and quite diverse.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people who get caught up in extremism, they're not all from deprived backgrounds, but they were all normal people at some point, if you like.
Yeah.
So something happened to them.
Something happened to them, and
I think,
and the effort that was put into making that thing happen is, as we've been discussing all morning, absolutely immense. Joshua, thank you. I just got distracted there. I do apologise, because someone asked me what hallelujah means in English. It's not a question I've ever been. I think I always think. Does anyone else automatically think of Leonard Cohen or Kay Burley when they hear the word hallelujah? Yeah, it's a bit niche, that last comment. I think it means more or less the same as Allahu Akbar, doesn't it? Hallelujah would be Hebrew, and Allahu Akbar would be Arabic. Because as far as I'm aware, it means God be praised, as opposed to God is great. And a couple of self-appointed Islamic experts telling me, actually, it means, I think you'll find it means Allah is greater, as if that somehow proves that it's anti-other religions. But Allah is just a word for God. And in Islam, it's actually the same God that Christians and Jews worship. So back to Bible school for you, my friends. So I think Robert Jenrick is trying to criminalise the shouting of hallelujah if you do it in Arabic. And he is currently in one of the front runners to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. So some of the problems we've been detailing all morning are not going anywhere. Salma is in Hatfield with the last word on this. Well, for today at least. Salma, what would you like to say?
Hi. Just a quick comment. Thank you, James, for the show and everything else.
You're very welcome. What do you mean everything else? I don't do anything else for you. I just do the show. But thank you. Thank you for your kindness.
A quick comment about Allahu Akbar.
Okay.
So I'm an Arabic speaker, and yes, literally it says Allah, God,
yes.
Akbar is great or great, the greatest. And yeah, it is like hallelujah. It's it's often you use it to rejoice. Allah Akbar, So yeah, in that way, it's a bit like hallelujah.
Yes. Well, be careful if Bob Jenrick's around, won't you? Seriously. Poor old Jeff Buckley.
About a separate point.
Well, we're going to run out of time now. I knew this. You've got a minute. I'll be quiet.
Okay. I wanted to make a link between what's happening at home and what's going on abroad. So racism is rife. Islamophobia is rampant, not just in this country, but in the West. When you have a government for decades vilifiing Arabs, invading and waging war on the Middle East and Arab countries, which are Muslim-majority countries, you're sending out a message. You're saying these lives do not matter. Brown lives do not matter. Muslims do not matter. Take, for example, what's happened in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya. What's happening in Israel. Muslims are in torture camps in Israel and in China. Can you imagine the pain of the people who belong to the Muslim faith and of the Arab and non-white? And by the way, there are.
I'd love to argue with you and try and portray all of these phenomena as being separate. But they can't be, can they? Even if it's a form of osmosis, you're just thinking that is. If the Uyghur get treated like that, the Palestinians in Gaza get treated like that. The original invasion of Iraq was ostensibly to actually help people under Saddam Hussein's jackboot. But
apparently,
well, I believe that it was. I'm very naive, as you know, but yeah, I think I said I warned you we were short of time, but those international ramifications of the dehumanizing or the denigrating of Muslims or Arabs. All over the world, from foreign policy right through to attitudes towards China, you probably can't argue against the idea that it seeps into the national consciousness of many, many people, possibly even of all of us, unless you happen to be a Muslim or an Arab or both. Thank you, Salma. It is coming. Well, it's just gone 12 noon, actually. Tony points out, you can thank me for more than the show because I have actually written a book. You're quite right, Tony, and I don't think I mention it often enough, How They Broke Britain, which details a heck of a lot of the contributors to the creation of precisely this ecosystem.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 12. Is it really Mystery Hour already? Oh, crept up on me. That completely took me by surprise. Your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. Remember, my favourite contribution of the week wins a Mystery Hour board game. I have to tell you, I don't know if you're familiar with the radio legend Chris Moyles. currently presenting a breakfast show on Radio X in this self-same building, so my occasional encounters with him brighten up my day. I bump into him in the lift, or I bump into him outside. It's a lovely goodness me, I wish he'd stop going on about how much he enjoys playing the Mystery Hour board game. And can I please get him some for his nephews? It's just a little bit rude, frankly. But anyway, you can win one by being my favourite contributor of the week. The full terms and conditions for this competition are at lbc.co.uk. And you can find out, and we're doing the booster pack this year. I've been waiting for it for ages. I'll make a phone call this afternoon. I shall find out more details about the Mystery Hour booster pack. But if you want to get your hands on the original, then the website you need to visit is mysteryhour.co.uk. If you've got no idea what I'm talking about, you're in for a bit of a surprise, particularly if you've only stumbled across LBC in recent weeks. Perhaps you turned to it or found that this was the place where you were hearing the most interesting conversations about the riots sweeping the country at the moment, and you've been fed an almost unleavened diet of riot-related conversation since the end of last week, since over a week ago. Certainly since I got back from my holidays on Monday, we've talked of nothing else on the programme. This would be, if we weren't changing gear violently, this would now be the 12th hour in succession. I don't think we've had a run like that since COVID, have we? So, what is it? Well, someone rings in with a question, then someone else rings in with an answer. Yes, that is it. That's it. That is it. I know what you're thinking, if you are new to it. You think, how could you have built up something so banal and obvious to sound like it was some sort of amazing act of radio genius? Well, you've got to be there. It's even got its own podcast. Full archive. How many are there now on the podcast? Hundreds or thousands? Hundreds. They've gone past the 500 mark. I get occasional messages from people who've stumbled upon it when they're going on a long, long journey. There are few things, I'm told. It doesn't work in my family because they're sick of the sound of my voice. There are few things, I'm told, that can make an entire family of all different ages engage with something coming out of the radio more than the Mystery Hour podcasts. And goodness knows there's so many of them now. So, 6 minutes after 12 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, and Mystery Hour is about to start. Here it goes. Perry is in Canary Wharf. Perry, question or answer?
Hi, James. Good afternoon. I've got a question for you.
Thank you, Perry.
So my question really is on food preferences, or rather dislikes.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to know, why don't I like Swedes and turnips? It turns out the producer who picked up the phone also has a similar sort of dislike.
She's a vegetarian, so she's got all sorts of problems.
Oh gosh!
I mean, by not liking vegetables, I'm not being rude about vegetarians. Although I enjoyed Tim Walls's comment to his daughter about being a vegetarian. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
He goes, then we're going to go get corn dogs, and his daughter goes, I'm a vegetarian, and he goes, turkey then. And she goes, that's meat. And he goes, not in Minnesota it isn't, it's special. And I just thought that was, I don't know why. Anyway, sorry, I digress. So what is going on in your physiognomy?
In my brain, exactly. Yeah. So look, I happen not to like those foods.
It's just those. It's just Swedes and turnips. You're all right with everything else?
I'm not that partial on parsnips. But that's it. I will eat absolutely anything else.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. I'll eat anything else. I've got some friends that don't like rhubarb. I love it. I've got a friend who will not eat uncooked tomatoes.
Yeah.
I love them.
Me too.
There's nothing wrong with any of these foods. I mean, look.
But they turn your stomach. Even the thought of them just repels you. Repulses you.
I wasn't force-fed turnips as a child. I wasn't hit over the head with a Swede. There's no specific aversion.
Have you ever tried Swede mashed with carrots and lots of good quality butter and black pepper?
Yes, I think, and it's not too bad. It's not, but it's got that. It's still got that back taste. I don't know what it is that I just don't like it. Look, what I'm trying to discover here.
Why don't we like things?
Yeah, psychologically, what's going on that should give you an adverse.
It might not be psychological. It might be physiological. It might be evolutionary reasons for it. It might be all sorts. It might be a million different reasons for this stuff.
But there's too many people that like that food, and it's specific about just a few
people.
Why don't
I like it? I'm trying to think of something I don't like. I used to think, Perry, that I didn't like marzipan. Because as a child, I didn't like marzipan. But I accidentally ate some marzipan a couple of Christmases ago. It turns out I rather like it. So I don't know if there's anything. Is there anything I don't... So, some people pay more attention to this show than I do, which is obviously very unprofessional of me. So is there anything I've forgotten that I don't like eating? Apart from humble pie, of course, which I'm allergic to.
But let's dismiss children out of it and just go, once you're an adult, I am an adult, why do I not like it? And there must be something psychological that kind of says you don't. I mean, you wouldn't get a horse going, I'm not so keen on that carrot, but I'll have that apple, please.
No, I don't think you would. Well, yeah, no, that's not true. My cats turn their nose up at various brands of cat food. They're incredibly snobbish. I'm just going to check with the team. Keith, is there anything you can't eat? Is there anything you don't like? I think of you as quite a fussy eater. Is that fair? Not fair at all. Is there anything you won't eat? No, you don't like nuts? Gosh. Hassan? And is there anything Hassan won't eat? Really? Tomatoes? Not an allergy? You just don't like them? But texture or taste? Both. Eleanor? Is Eleanor parsnips and Swedes? Was that? Why do you look so serious? It's mystery hour. What don't you like? What food don't you like? Is there anything you really hate? Just parsnips. Oh, so you were the one that was agreeing with Perry a minute ago. Okay, fair enough. What about Grace? Have we got anything? Sorry, Georgia. Have we got anything that Georgia doesn't like? Anything you don't eat? No? It's great. Broccoli, very popular. It's a great radio show. This, isn't it, Perry? This is award-winning content.
Like?
Say again.
What do people?
And Emily doesn't like aubergine. These are all sort of classics of the genre, aren't they? Who doesn't like tomatoes? Hassan. No, we've already done Hassan not liking tomatoes. Pay attention. This is why Chris Moyles can't shut up about Mystery Hour and constantly badgering for this kind of content that puts us on a different pedestal to all other radio programmes under the sun. I will find out for you, Perry. I really will.
I'd really like to know if is it psychological or is it physiological?
Physiological, biological, botanical. Could be all of those things. Why don't we like certain foods? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Yeah, look, some stuff I probably wouldn't go for, like tripe, but it's not quite the same, is it? 11 after 12. Stuart's in Watford. Stuart, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's a question.
Carry on.
So I'm an author and I also play guitar. I sung in an Irish band for about 20 years.
Excellent.
And my question is, there's only so many chords that you can play on a guitar, or if you're a piano player, there's only so many keys you can play on the piano.
This is true.
Yes.
That's not an opinion, that's counting.
Yes, exactly. So are we going to eventually run out of original tunes?
No. Next
you
question.
Don't think so? But what about copyright and all that, if it does come to that stage?
Well, there was a case, wasn't there? Was it Ed Sheeran? There was a case with Ed Sheeran when someone had accused him of nicking something and the judge found that was an unreasonable accusation because there is an inevitability of combinations coming around again. So there must be, if there's a finite number of notes, there must be a finite number of note combinations. But I suspect that the number will be so enormous that you're always going to have, we're never going to run out of tunes.
You think?
Well, I think it's technically possible, but practically impossible. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but
why don't you sound? What do you can't? I mean, you can't run out of tunes. It's just not allowed.
I think it might happen.
It's not going to happen in our lifetime, is it? And also, by the time we approach the point at which we are running out of tunes, we'd have forgotten some of the earliest tunes, like Greensleeves, and then we'll be able to invent them again.
Well, maybe, I don't know, but I do think there's going to be a time when we will completely run out of original tunes.
All right, I'm going to ask that question then, because I can tell you've been quite dismissive of my, I feel very carefully calculated answer.
Yeah.
You're on. Okay, so will we ever run out of tunes? 0345 6060 973. Used to run out of tunes back in the day. Do you remember? Have to put the same old tape on about 5 times rather than a day. Can't run out of tunes these days if you're hooked up to Bluetooth. There's an infinite amount. One of the things I've been meaning to talk to you about, it's not just Stuart, you as well. One of the things that my children have somehow developed extraordinary taste in music, both of them. Much, much, much cooler than I ever was as a kid. And oddly, when it comes to music, you won't believe this, but I was quite cool. But what the algorithms do, what Spotify do, I can't really introduce them to much music. I can't remember what came on the other day. It might have been Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I thought, how can you know about Nick? This is the kind of, if I ever get my vinyl collection out of the loft, these are the things I'm going to leave to you. These are the, and then I thought, well, of course, because they listen to stuff that they like, and then it pops up and says, oh, if you like that, you'll like this. I don't know if anyone's written about this, about the completely different relationship with music you must have in the internet age, or in the streaming age, crucially. And what was that one called that was illegal that everybody used? It kind of blew up the whole model of selling music. What was it? Was it Napster? Yeah, I think it was. So the post-Napster, or the pre-Napster and the post-Napster relationships with music must be completely different. I once cleaned did I ever tell you that? I washed a neighbour's car, and he had 20 tapes in his tape collection in his car, and I asked if I could copy them all. Because my music collection was tiny. Unless you could afford it. You remember you'd record stuff off the radio and try and cut off Gary Davis going, it's number 23. But for my kid, they can listen to anything they want. How old am I sounding now, Keith? Yeah, it's 12:15.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It is 12:16. Why don't we like certain foods, and will we ever run out of tunes? Will's in Camberwell. Question or answer?
Question, please.
Yes.
When did gift party etiquette in the UK collapse?
What do you mean?
Well, so I had my big birthday a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I got in a crate of real ale, 80-odd pints from Southwark Brewery in London.
Well done, good plug. Are you associated with them in any way?
Nothing to do with them at all.
Oh, well played.
But it was lovely though, and I just got off Foster's and all that stuff, and I was into the real stuff.
Yeah.
And a few people arrived, and said, where's the fridge? And the fridge by the end of that was full.
Yeah.
But it wasn't sort of gifts for me or anyone else. It was just for people to drink themselves.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, I still had a load of beer left. And second point is that my partner, who's Indian, she had a birthday party.
Right.
And all of the people said, oh, do you want this? Do you want that? And whole swathes of food was brought, loads of stuff, choice gifts and all that.
Yeah.
But that's British English. We just need to bring stuff that we want to drink and eat at the party.
This is a bit.
I remember from when I was young.
No, but this is a bit awkward.
What?
Well, what if it's just you?
Could be. My poor organising.
Well, no, just people think it's only Will. I'm not going to bother getting him a present.
It could be, but then if someone invites me to a party, they sort of say, just bring yourself and whatever you want to drink.
They don't mean that, Will. They never mean. That's why you didn't get any presents, because you believe them when they say to you, don't bring a present. Everybody wants presents, Will.
That could be right.
I got presents at my last big one. In fact, the only reason I threw the party in the first place was to get all the presents.
You've got all that book royalty money need to spend on something, haven't you?
Didn't even like half the people I invited, but I just invited the richest people I know because I thought they'd bring all the best presents. That's why you didn't. That's why you didn't get invited. Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm joking. I haven't celebrated any of my biggies lately, but we do get presents. My wife did, and she got loads of presents.
Yeah. So maybe it's an age thing or a class thing or a...
I don't know. I don't think it is. I think your question is it a thing? Have we stopped getting presents for grown-ups? Have we stopped getting presents for grown-ups? Because I'm not sure we have. Keith thinks we have. But again, that might just be you. And
the whole party's become a binge opportunity, basically. Bring your own.
Yeah, well, I don't get that. Because I'm a bit... My dad drilled this into me as a kid, that if you invite people to... And I'm not in any way sitting in judgment on people who didn't have this drilled into them by their dads. But my dad was a great one for saying, if you're inviting people to enjoy your hospitality, you provide everything. So it's nice if people bring a bottle, but you absolutely don't tell them to, or throw a party that involves paying for your own drinks or anything like that. And listen, I'm able to do that, and I'm not in any way sitting in judgment on others. But also, the last thing I want is people turning up with a pavlova or a coronation chicken. I'll put it on the list, Will. But I mean, it might be a bit big for Mystery Hour. It might be a socio-economic inquiry worthy of its own PhD thesis. Have we stopped? Is this a thing? And if so, why? The giving of presents to and from adults. I mean, there's a lot of chipping in these days. I guess because of WhatsApp, you can do a WhatsApp. Say, what we're going to get, Will, but. Again, this is where it gets a bit awkward because no one did for Will or Keith. Glenn's in Fareham. Glenn, question or answer?
Hello, James.
Hello,
it's
Glenn.
an answer.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm being very formal because you were nasty to me the last time I called, so I'm trying to be nice.
There's a delay. I'm never nasty, Glenn, except to people who richly deserve it. So I'd suggest we gloss over that very quickly and move on to what is the answer that you seek to provide.
Oh, okay. So you had a caller who asked, will we ever run out of tunes?
Yes.
And mathematically, the answer, of course, is yes. There are 12 notes in the scale we use, so there are a finite number of tunes, depending how long your tune is, of course. But
yes.
But the reason I know is because about 4 years ago, a musician in America, I think, whose name I forget, and a programmer called Rubin wrote an algorithm to store every possible tune on digital media. Yeah, and then they filed those tunes with the Copyright Office in America, and made them public domain. And their intention was to help any artists in the future who are taken to court or sued in an attempt to say that they'd copied a tune from someone else. Their intention is to say, well, you can't have copied it because every tune is public domain because we've filed it with the Copyright Office.
I don't quite understand. So, but if I write a tune now and it's an original tune, it's mine.
Exactly. Yeah. Indeed, it is. And then let's say
but they can't have recorded every tune. They just can't have done. It's not possible.
Oh,
is it?
Well, it is possible.
Of course it is. It's just the size of the processors, the speed.
Just an incredible amount of data. Yeah.
So the answer is what I said then.
The answer is that I think you said that
technically possible.
There probably is.
It's technically possible,
yes.
But materially impossible, or practically impossible.
Yes, although materially possible, you just need the storage medium to store them all, which they did.
And got it. What was it called again?
What was what called again?
The people that did the thing that you said.
Well, they wrote an algorithm.
Yeah, but what were they called? What were they called?
What were their names?
What do I Google? What flipping heck, Glenn? No wonder I got cross with you last time. What do I Google next time? To find out more?
I think his name is Rubin, the programmer, and Rubin, and I believe the musician might have a weird name like Real, R-H-E-L or something like that.
I don't know if you get a round of applause for this because you're not providing me with enough information that I need to check whether what you're telling me is true.
Well, it's
someone's just sent me the number 68.7 billion. Does that ring any bells with you?
I mean, that's definitely about right. So if you think, come on.
Give him a round of applause. Give him a round. Yeah, definitely. 68.7 billion. Bang on. That's how many tunes that were recorded, apparently. But I mean, who knows? Thank you, Glenn. David's in Milton Keynes. David, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
I've been really enjoying watching the Olympics, but something has stuck in my mind.
Speed climbing. Is it speed climbing? Have you watched? Have you watched the speed climbing?
I haven't actually.
Mate, the speed climbing is the maddest thing you have ever seen in your life. They basically run up walls. You know, on Gladiators, right at the end, where they no, what's the other one as well? The one I like where they do come on, what's it called?
The ninja one.
The one that Chris Kamara used to do. The one that Ninja Warrior. Thank you, David. At the end of that, you know, the wall at the end. Imagine the wall at the end of that, and the competitors doing it about 30 times faster than the actual Ninja Warriors managed to do it. It's absolutely extraordinary. I'm 52 years old, and I'm going to be at the next Olympics doing speed climbing if it kills me, which it almost. Anyway, where were we? You're talking about swimming, not speed climbing.
I'll add it to the list because there's a lot to watch. There's so many events and stuff.
Promise me, if it hasn't finished, even if it has finished, you've got to check the speed climbing out.
I will. I promise.
Carry on.
So, in some of the interviews that Rebecca Addington was doing, or Sharon Davis, they introduced the concept of saying, "Oh, I think we've got a slow pool." And 2 or 3 times it was mentioned, it stuck in my mind, and I was trying to rack my brains. Well, surely, the pools are definitely all the same length, and they're all full of water, and you would think that they were standard Olympic pools.
Yeah.
Well, you can see why I've arrived at a mystery hour question, because I don't know what that means.
Why? How can a pool be fast or slow? All indoor?
Yeah.
If it were outdoor and it was very windy, you might have a Have we not done this before? Does this ring any bells with you? I think we've done a variation on this, maybe. But yeah, it is a really good question.
Fast and slow tracks, but I get that because they can be like, different
surfaces,
levels of resistance, different surfaces,
different levels of wetness. Can you different sort of water? Well, you might, more chlorine or less chlorine. I don't know. It seems unlikely, but you're talking about the tiniest of margins here, aren't you?
I love it.
I
mentioned it a couple of times. Yeah.
Are you sure you weren't imagining it? You didn't get it wrong.
100%. No.
So
Sharon
fast
Davis
and slow pulls.
said it a couple of times. Yeah.
Fast and slow pulls. What's going on? 26 minutes after 12 is the time. 03456060973 is the number that you need. Thank you, David. That's a great question. All good questions this week. Ali's in Barnet. Ali, question or answer?
Hi, afternoon, James. It's an answer, please.
Carry on, mate.
So it's for the question that was raised about why do we like particular food?
Not like.
Well, why do we not like?
Yes.
Either way around, really. So
no, not like, crucially.
Okay, fine. So we're going not like.
Yeah.
So there's actually some studies on this. So, for instance, coriander. It seems to be a big one. So a lot of people don't like coriander. Some people love it. And the study's been done, and they found a particular gene. It's called the OR6A2 gene. And if you've got a particular variation of that gene, it basically makes you sort of perceive the taste of coriander as a bit soapy.
Yeah, I know about this. Tim Lovejoy's got this, hasn't he?
I don't know.
The fella on the telly who does the cooking programme on Sunday mornings. Used to live around the corner. Lovely bloke, really lovely bloke. Don't know why he's never invited me on his programme. I don't know why I'm bigging him up. He can't touch coriander. It drives him. I mean, but that doesn't answer why Perry doesn't like turnips, does it?
No, I mean, well, the other thing I was going to say as well is...
So coriander is unique because it's been genetically identified, but there is no gene that automatically turns you... They just don't like the taste.
Well, there's other ones as well, actually, funnily enough, for spicy food and fatty food as well. There's another gene, that's, I think it was a TAS2R38 gene, and that one basically, if you don't have that gene, then you kind of have a more likeliness to enjoy chili and fatty foods.
Yeah,
but
I get this, and I'm going to give you a round of applause once I've established your qualifications, which I suspect will probably involve a degree in pharmacology or something like that.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Right, round of applause for me. Thank you. But I don't think I don't think Hassan, who's here on work experience, is averse to tomatoes for genetic reasons. I don't think that... What was your problem, Keith?
I mean, there's a lot of other things as well, like texture.
Nuts.
I mean,
Keith doesn't like nuts. That's not going to be genetic, is it?
No, but certain other things are a bit, certain tastes are growers on you. Like, for example, beer. Nobody should technically like beer because, evolutionarily speaking...
Nobody does the first time they try to taste
exactly,
it.
Exactly. So it's a grower. So usually, evolutionarily, sweet is good and bitter is bad. And so spicy, because it's sort of deters you. You kind of associate that with things being off, which is basically beer is basically...
It can be a bit eggy. So the Swedes and the turnips and the parsnips can all be a bit eggy. So you learn to like them rather than...
Exactly. You learn to like them because your mum tells you...
This answer's getting better all the time.
You.
This answer is getting better all the time, Ali. You're a natural.
So I mean, some of them you learn to like it. And also some certain foods, depending on social... Like, for example, beer... if you're having it with your mates or your sugar spikes and then you release certain hormones that make your body sort of think, oh, hang on, this isn't actually that bad for me. So you kind of override your natural instinct to not like it.
So I don't know that Perry is going to be satisfied with this. I like it, but in the straight, absolute answer, why doesn't Perry like turnips, we haven't provided, have we? Really?
They probably haven't cooked him a decent enough one.
Not that. I tried that, mate. I told him about my Swede recipe. He wasn't having any of it. Why doesn't Perry like turnips?
For him then, I don't know.
So I'll give you the round of applause, but there is room for an embellishment on this one, I think, or an improvement, possibly. Which would mean it's not linked to pharmacology or similar disciplines. Ali, great work. 12:30 is the time, and Amelia Cox has your headlines.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
At 12:33 is the time. I don't know how significant it is that Rishi Sunak is photographed having dinner in a fancy restaurant in Beverly Hills. I don't know that the leader of the opposition should come back from holiday at a time of crisis like this, but It would have been perhaps better if he'd commented on things that are going on here. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter this hour, does it? Because it's mystery hour. 12:33 is the time. Questions still in need of answers include... well, it's a bit of a weird one from Old Will, this. Have we stopped giving presents to each other as adults? Some of my team think we have, and some of them think we haven't, which is why I described it as a very awkward question, because it might be personal. I don't know. Have a crack at that if you want. What was Glenn's question? I can't read my own writing. What was Glenn's question? Was he answering a question? Are you sure? Oh, yeah, he was, wasn't he? That's not the one I mean. Then you've got what's a fast pull and what's a slow pull. That was David. What was the one before that? Well, don't all talk at once. Is it? So that's all that's on the list. We've got the food question, the piano question, the presents question, and the pools question. Carry on. Tristan's in Greenwich. Tristan, question or answer?
Answer, please, James.
Carry on, Tristan.
Slow pulls.
Slow pulls.
It's a boring one, unfortunately.
Oh.
It's the depth of the pull. The length never changes, but the depth of pulls change.
Ah.
So when I used to do competitive swimming, that's how I know. And my foster mum was a coach, swimming instructor.
Oh, yeah.
When you do your times for competitions, they take into account the depth of the pool. So you might have done it quickly in a 3 metre deep pool, and I might have done it quicker than you or similar to you in a 2.5 metre pool.
Really?
So, yeah.
That's at the deepest end, because all pools have a deep end and a shallow end, do they, or not? Or is that me being silly?
No.
No. Olympic level pools are all equal, are they?
They're all equal. Same with the diving as well. They said that the diving is slightly shallower this year than other years.
But that won't make any difference, will it? Or
no,
will
that doesn't make any difference.
But it will to how fast you can swim. The depth will make a difference. What is it? Is a fast pool shallower or deeper? Shallower, I reckon.
So the faster the pull, the deeper the water.
Oh, I got that wrong as well.
You know why?
No.
Think of it as a sonar. So as the water waves are hitting the bottom of the pool, they're bouncing back up at you, giving you resistance. But in a deeper pool, the water takes longer to bounce back up.
It's a longer journey.
Yeah.
But surely once it started bouncing back, the gap between each one will still be longer, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of...
That is, do you know, that sonar analogy there is a thing of absolute beauty, because what you've managed to do is take something that was not making a great deal of sense to me at all, and you've made it crystal clear.
Think of it as speed climbing in altitude versus not in altitude. There you go, speed climbing.
What do you think of the speed climbing? Eh?
I love it, but in higher altitude it was slower because the air's thinner, so...
I don't think you needed that. I think we'll stick with sonar.
No.
But it's good that you've brought speed climbing in, because obviously that
I had to.
makes your teacher's pet. Qualifications?
Thank you.
Oh, you told us.
I used to swim for the county.
Did you really?
I did.
Why'd you stop?
Because I got fat and old.
Police are shot. Same here, actually. That's why I'm not in Paris. Round of applause.
Speed climbing career.
Round of applause for Tristan. Oh, lovely. Callum says, that might be one of my favourite Mystery Hour contributions. Me too. I don't know why. That one tickled me pink. 12:36 is the time. Plenty of time for more questions to be put on the board. Matt's in Dronfield. Matt, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on.
Tablets. So my daughter's just got some tablets from the pharmacist. Those little sort of plastic torpedo type things, half red, half white.
Yes.
Why is that? Why? I've had half green, half white, half blue, half white. Why half coloured and half white? What's the point?
The colours don't denote anything, do they?
No, because she had a repeat prescription. The first ones were red and white, and then the second ones, the same brand, were green and white.
So why are they different colours? Is what we're asking. Why
exactly,
are they? Why are capsules medicinal capsules double colours, two colours?
Yeah.
How many people live in Dronfield?
What would you say, about 20,000?
Is it? Oh, right. Do you ever have this where you met someone years ago and you always think of them when a town pops up, even though 20,000 people live there? So I've got, as soon as you appeared on the screen, this name popped into my head from someone I was at youth theatre with in 1990. It's quite weird. So if you'd said about, I don't know, 2,000, I might have asked if you knew them, but I won't, because that would be weird. That's also a bit of an invasion of privacy as well for them.
Well, you started that story last time we spoke, and then we digressed. So
did I really?
The end of it.
God, I'm boring. I'm not only boring, I'm predictable, Matt. It's pathetic, frankly. Let's get an answer to your question at least to make up for the paucity of the radio content this hour. 12:38 is the time. Couple of phone lines free if you're quick. 0345 6060973. I think there's still room for not improvements, but an embellishment on the why don't we like certain foods, the non-genetic reasons. So, someone who just really doesn't like tomatoes. I've got a friend who can't eat tomatoes for medical reasons, not that. Really don't like turnips. And it doesn't mean, I could take it or leave it, or I'd never actually order it. It means if it was put on your plate and you had to... So at school, at prep school, you weren't allowed to leave anything on your plate. It was brutal. It was like something out of Charles Dickens. Most of my education was like something out of Charles Dickens. That was a good bit. But I remember there was one kid who could not eat semolina for love nor money. And I didn't like semolina either, but I always sat quite near a bloke who'd eat anything, and all you had to do was wait until no teachers were looking and then swap plates, and he'd finish your semolina for you. I think one breakfast he ate 11 boiled eggs because none of us really wanted to eat them. He ate them all. So I digress slightly because there was this kid who could not eat semolina. I remember his name, but that also would be a massive invasion of privacy. And he was crying, and the teacher wouldn't let him leave. So we all went off to sport. We all went off to play rugby in the afternoon, and this kid was still in the dining room. And he was so sad he'd started crying. So the semolina... I just got a bit of a thing then in my tummy. The semolina was diluted by tears and snot. He's snotting and tearing into his semolina, and the teacher is forcing him to... not allowed to leave the dining room until he's cleared his plate. And our parents paid for this. They paid for this education. Isn't that brutal? Well, about 1983, probably 1984. It wouldn't happen now. But that's what... Yeah, it was lunchtime. Thank you, Keith. That's what I'm talking about. So that person did not like semolina. It's not just, I can take it or leave it. He really didn't like semolina. And that's what we want to know. Why? 0345 6060973. Lucy is in Rains Park. Lucy, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
So why aren't people more creative at tying their shoelaces when there are hundreds of knots?
Are there hundreds of knots?
Yeah, I think so.
You mean not like for scouts and sailors?
Yeah, exactly. Like we have hundreds of knots and people only tie their shoe in one way.
Yeah, well, it's because it's so easy to undo.
But...
Okay, why don't you tie your shoelaces in a creative way?
From the bottom up.
What do you mean from the bottom up?
Like, from the top. So instead of having my bow at the top, I tie it at the bottom.
But then you've got a flappy ankle.
Not really, because
you can't tighten it up around the top. The shoes are designed for a reason, Lucy. And also the knot that you use, even though you've laced it in a, quotes, eccentric, end quotes, way, the knot that you use is the same as the knot that you'd used if you'd laced your shoes in a more sensible fashion.
Yeah, but it's...
Because it's the knot that works best.
But how do we know that? Because no one's
Because they've tried all the other ones.
Huh?
They've tried all the other ones.
No one's ever tried tying their shoe with a barrel knot.
Well, have you?
I haven't. But
why not?
But have you ever been outside and you have a can of Coke and you put your Coke in the tie? It doesn't fit very well on a shoe.
What?
The shoe, the knot you use when you carry a can of Coke, that wouldn't work on your shoe.
I don't use a knot when I carry a can of Coke.
Well,
what are you talking about, Lucy? What?
It's like when you go camping and you need somewhere to put your Coke can, you need to put it in a knot.
In a knot?
Well, obviously.
Has someone spiked my tea?
But that doesn't matter. The thing is, I don't understand why people don't tie their knot with, those knots you use when you put a light bulb in the ceiling.
I don't use a knot when I put a light bulb in the ceiling or when I drink cans of Coke. Is there a different meaning of the word knot that I'm not aware of?
Well, But I just don't understand. Well, no one's tried to use those knots on their shoes.
Hang on, let's take me back to the light bulb knot. What's that about?
So, I don't know if it's not, but the metal bit on a light bulb, which looks a bit like a knot if you coil it around. The bit on the end of a light bulb, when you plug it in, that you twist it in if it's a twisty light bulb, and it looks like a knot.
But yeah. Well, okay, yeah. Oh, I see. So it looks like the two ends of a shoelace poking out of the barrel of the bulb.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So.
But you can't tie your shoe with that.
That's true. You can't. You're not related to Alan in Ipswich. You're not related to Alan in Ipswich, are you, by any chance? You definitely can't tie your shoes with a light bulb. I think we can all agree about that.
I never said. Yeah, I said exactly. Yeah, I never said we could. Right. But there are loads of knots which you can tie your shoes with, and then.
Yeah, but I don't understand why you're asking everybody else why they don't do it when you don't do it yourself.
I do. I tie my shoes.
But you don't. You use the same knot.
But that's because I don't know how you tie any other knots except for a barrel knot.
Well, that's part of the answer, I imagine, to your original. Why don't we tie our
training and education to tie knots?
Let's find out from a knot expert.
Okay.
No, from an actual expert, not a knot expert, a real expert.
Yeah, okay.
An expert in knots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Back to, just before you go, what was it with the Coca-Cola?
Well, there's a knot.
Do you tie a string around the rim? Don't you have pockets?
So you tie it around the bottom, and then you do it around the sides, and then you have a bag to carry your coat. Because when you're outside and you need something to carry your coat with, it's not handy to put it in a bag.
We're saying Coke, are we? Coca-Cola.
Yeah, Coca-Cola.
Other cola drinks are available.
Yeah, we can also use
I just
other
want to do a
cans.
quick. Do we know what Lucy's talking about? Do you know what Lucy's talking about? Yeah. No. Does Hassan? Hassan's very young. Do you know? Hassan's here on work experience. Handles on the can. You make little handles for the can.
Well, no, you tie it around with a piece of string, and then you
around
hold
the can.
Yeah, so it's like a mesh bag, but with bigger holes, and you carry it, and it means it doesn't leak because I once tried putting it in my handbag and it went everywhere. It was not very good. So when you put it in when you carry it with string, it prevents the leak.
Right. I just mind how you go, Lucy.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It's 12:47. Why are capsule tablets different colours? Have we stopped giving? When did we stop giving? When did we stop giving grown-ups presents? When did grown-ups stop getting presents on their birthday? I'm still not persuaded that that's true, but it's a bit difficult to explain without all the people who don't get presents feeling aggrieved when they hear from all the people who do. But is there even a question there? That's like peak mystery hour. Is that even a question? Did Will even have a question about presents? Did they get presents? We've done the piano tunes. We've done the food, although I still don't really know why Perry doesn't like turnips. Why doesn't Perry like turnips? There's no trauma involved, no childhood Semolina-style saga. Why doesn't Perry like turnips? And then why are tablets different colours? David's in Edgware. David, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's another Olympics question for you. I hope that's all right.
I love Olympics questions. Does it involve speed climbing?
It doesn't, but I'm actually, not just to say I have been watching it, I am watching it. It's on my screen at the moment.
Well, it's on at well, don't tell everybody that. They'll turn me off, won't they? Flipping
heck.
It's
actually not speed. It's not speed. It's women's boulder. Sorry, it looked the same from a second.
Very
it's on a second screen of mine, yeah.
Carry on.
So the track events, obviously the 100 metres is just straight, but then anything that starts to go round the bend, they usually stagger their starting positions to make it fair.
Yeah.
But the longer distance events, like I watched the steeplechase the other day, they all seem to start in a straight line, and then they run into the inside lane.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is fair, but I can't work out how it's fair. Surely, like if there was just a second or fractions of a second in the finishing time, like if you've had an advantage if you started in the inside lane. So I don't understand what's going on
the races where they're not staggered, you mean? Long distance races where they're all lined across the starting line.
Exactly, yeah. Unless that line is curved, which I haven't been able to tell, I don't understand how that's fair. And I kind of think it's like they're saying, well, it's such a long race, it doesn't really make a difference.
But you can't say that when the world record could depend upon a 5,000th of a second, can you?
Exactly, that's exactly my point.
I know,
so
I thought so.
What am I missing?
Well, if you're missing it, I'm missing it.
Right, okay, well, that's good, because I thought it might be a really obvious thing that I haven't
It still might be, mate. I wouldn't derive that much confidence from the fact that I'm labouring under the same confusion that you are.
Well, fair enough.
I was just thinking about, I watched the
only thing I could think of is a curved line. That's all I could think of, is the line curved at the beginning, but I don't think so, because they all sort of immediately run into the inside.
How long since you were on the track, David?
Oh, my God, no, we don't want to talk about that.
I think there are curves at the starting line.
Yeah.
I think it might be on a kind of crescent, not a crescent. It's a.
And how would you even do that? Degrees of curvature for over maybe
that's a different question.
I don't know how you would start to.
I like this. Okay, where are we? 12:50, so we should have time to get an answer. So yeah, normally on they do all the really long races it happens in, not just the steeplechase. I think
that's just the one I happen to.
The 800. You have lanes for the 800. Some of them. You cut across. You run all. I can't remember actually, but the ones where you all start on the same starting line. How can that be fair? When the little diagonal to get to the inside lane, where everybody more or less finishes, means you're running a little bit further than the person who starts in the inside lane. 12:51 is the time. Great question. Thank you, David. I like Olympic-themed questions. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. Sue's in Twickenham. Sue, question or answer?
Answer,
Carry on,
James.
Sue. Carry on, Sue.
It's the food.
Marvellous. Why doesn't Perry like turnips?
So learning to like foods or being exposed to foods or our taste in foods is a matter of evolution, genetics, environment, exposure, learning and association. So it's actually a very complex process. And if you, let's take olives and semolina and turnips. They were such good examples. Yes. So I'm now in my very mature years. Let's go with that. Yes. It's taken me the whole of my life to like olives. And I know all about exposure and learning to like things. Most babies have to taste something 15 times before they can decide that they like it or not.
How interesting.
So, and that.
How did you train yourself to like olives?
Having grandchildren.
Really?
Yeah.
So what happened? You thought you didn't like them, and then you tried one.
I knew I didn't like them. No, I knew I didn't like them.
But how many did you eat before you liked them then?
Oh, hundreds, I would say.
But why? I don't understand why you'd eat olives you didn't like.
Well, no, I would try and taste them. I wouldn't eat them.
Oh,
no, I'd leave them on the side of the plate, James.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I would taste them, go, no, I really don't like them. And then my grandson loved them, and so he would say, have one, Granny. And how could I say no, because that's not a good learning experience. How could I say no, I don't? So,
and then you liked them?
Yes, I don't like bitter ones. I like the slightly sweeter black ones, if I'm honest.
Kalamata. You want Kalamata olives? I was there last week. That's where the best olives. That is where the best olives come from. Have you ever made yourself a spaghetti puttanesca?
No.
That's delicious. Do you like anchovies?
I could.
You're probably not going to be mad. So puttanesca's got anchovies, olives, and capers in it. It's my favourite pasta sauce. I use
I shall have a go.
Have a look at it because your grandson might like it as well. It's really delicious and it's a really good use of olives. Nigella's got a lovely recipe.
Oh, right. Okay. I'll look that up. Thank you. Turnips. Turnips are important.
Don't put them in your puttanesca, whatever you do.
No chance.
So Perry could conceivably develop a like of turnips if he put in the hours.
Well, also, I think if he adjusted the taste. So all babies are born with a preference for sweet because breast milk is slightly sweet. And so you are predetermined to turn to breast milk. And then we have to learn to like the more bitter taste. We are naturally, genetically aversive to bitter because in evolutionary days that might have been a poisonous plant.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's what you have to work
would
on.
Come under that. So you would have to work. I would suggest cooking them with something sweet that you like, like a sweet carrot, something like that, or even adding half a teaspoonful of sugar when you're cooking the turnip and then reduce it so you educate, if that's the right word, but also he will associate, train, that's a better word, much better word, but he will also associate turnips with the fact he doesn't like them. And psychologically, that's a huge thing to get over.
What a brilliant answer. What are your qualifications, Sue?
I used to teach feeding behaviour problems in babies and young children at UCL. I'm a speech and language therapist in feeding problems.
How amazing. Just run through that list again that you had right at the top of all the different factors.
Evolution, genetics, environment, exposure, learning, association, experience. Just one final little thought.
Quickly.
Semolina is a texture thing.
Yeah.
My family won't be even in the kitchen if I cooked.
No, I'm not going. I know, I haven't been near it since, but I always remember that lad, that poor fellow. It was like,
Poor
it really
man.
was. Yeah, it was. It was horrible. He's probably scarred for life. I hope he's not listening. He's probably triggered.
Yeah.
So have a round of applause on me.
Thanks, James.
Do you think you need trigger warnings for Semolina? Yeah, well, maybe if you were that child. Daniel's in Worcester. It wasn't you, was it?
It wasn't me, James.
Because it was only in Chaddesley
I
Corbett.
certainly don't like what they call Swedes.
It happened in Chaddesley Corbett, Daniel, so it wasn't impossible that it would have been you. It's just stranger things have happened.
I was in Wales at the time, probably.
Okay, carry on. Question or answer?
Well, answer, I hope.
Yes. What have you got?
Well, on the pills.
Oh, yes.
This is from quite a long time ago.
You're not talking about Lucy, are you, with her shoelace?
With the string vest, no. If you ended up in casualty or A&E or whatever they call it now after 10 hours, if you'd ingested the wrong tablets or you made a mistake when you vomited, they've always got. They used to have a sort of book of every pill that you can have, and they're all different shapes, different sizes, different colours, so they can identify what you've actually had. Oh. So I think with the ones he was talking about, capsules, that they're going to be different for the different dosage.
In the schoolyard, where dreams take flight, we found love in the morning light. Hand in hand, we walk the halls, innocent hearts heedless of our falls. Giggles and blushes under the old oak tree. In the innocence of youth, we felt so free. Innocent love, pure and true, like the morning dew shining anew. Hearts entwined in a tender dance. Innocent love, our sweet romance. Passing notes in class.
Because I've noticed on my pills that even though they're different companies, they're always the same for the same pill, with the same dosage.
So it's in case of overdose, ease of identification.
Or if kids pick up a pill or whatever and they
so
you don't
that you know what
had.
it is. And
Yeah,
you get
so
to
you don't know
hospital,
what
you
to
haven't
do
got
with
the
it,
tablets,
what
and the
to give
patient
them.
might. Yeah, I like that. Qualifications?
Well, I was a dentist, but I'm not sure. If you get
What's that got to do with the price of eggs?
then I'll genuflect to them.
But did you get that? What your answer has nothing to do with your training as a dentist.
Well, we did a bit of pharmacology, but
that's a relief.
Not a lot.
Okay, I'm going to give you a round of applause. Although, as we both know, it may turn out to be a mistake.
Well, I have been contested before.
Well, haven't we all?
Yeah, on toothpaste, even.
That's just not fair. Shlomi is in Manchester. Shlomi, question or answer?
Answer.
Make it snappy. Vanessa's here. She's itching. She's itching to go.
One.
Carry on.
Essentially, what you're saying, that it is the most simple knot. People do have different variations of that knot, even within the way you actually get to making the same knot. There are different ways of actually executing.
That's true. Rabbit's ears and what have you.
Nowadays, there are a number of shoes that are becoming increasingly sort of regular that do have different sort of knotting options. Like we have the pulley string system, elasticated type of systems, and then in the world of disabilities, we have a load of other adaptations that we can put in place for people who can't tie their shoelaces.
But for people who can, the reason why they do the same one more or less all the time is because it is by far the most effective one to do.
And this is the knot that we use across our life. If you think about it, that is the knot you use in your day-to-day.
Qualifications?
I'm an occupational therapist. I work with children with disabilities, and I literally just researched this recently because we ran a program in a special school that I work in, so that all the children should be able to tie their shoes, and we've just done that. Literally just completed. I was so excited when I heard that question.
That's a mad little coincidence, isn't it? You had the radio on, and up it pops the thing you've just done a study on, and it's got you a round of applause, Shlomi.
Thank you.
Can't say fairer than that. I'm going to give the game to Lucy. Many people may feel she doesn't deserve it, but if that exchange didn't make you smile, then I suspect that you are made of marzipan. That's it from me for another day. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen again on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can also find all of LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as all of our live radio stations here at Global Towers. So download Global Player for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Sawbrick with you at 4, but now standing in for Sheila Fogarty, it is Vanessa Felt. 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 Fogarty, it is Vanessa